They didn't say it outright, but they should step in to help us when danger comes. The voice in the darkness replied. The 10 god clans are essentially one body. If we're destroyed, how can they survive? They understand perfectly well that without the lips, the teeth grow cold. Hearing this, the shadow in the dark nodded slightly. Then we wait, and we prepare. We'll give them a nice gift. Within the true martial god empire, dusk was slowly settling in. After handling the matters of the banquet, Willow Ancestor came to report to Suzimo. He said, Ancestor, the banquet is over and everyone has been sent off. You don't know. Those people were like flies, buzzing around me non-stop. You didn't agree to anything, right? Suzimo asked with a smile. How could I? Willow Ancestor shook his head. Aside from Primal Mountain Emperor and a few others, we don't need anyone else. How did things go with the Zhao God Clan members? Suzimo asked again. They want an alliance and say they can provide information, but I feel it's not very useful, Willow Ancestor replied. And I don't trust the 10 god clans. So I just humored them for now. We'll see if the information they provide later is useful before deciding whether to cooperate. You handled it well. We don't need the 10 god clans in the first place, Suzimo said with a nod. And from now on, keep a high posture when speaking to others. The true martial sacred ground is no longer the same as before. You don't need to put faith in me. The sacred ground has its own people who will save it, including those who fight silently behind the scenes. I'm just a passerby, Suzimo said, waving his hand. Get ready. We set out tomorrow. Willow Ancestor nodded, then added, Ancestor, in the treasury of the ancient dragon god empire, we found a dragon ship. It's perfect for carrying our disciples. Good. I was worried they wouldn't be able to keep up with my speed, Suzimo said. The night passed without words. Although it seemed peaceful, the entire absolute god heaven churned with hidden currents. Countless forces and countless people were moving in secret. The next morning, the sun rose. The sky was a pure, unmarred blue, and the heavens carried a streak of violet dawn rising from the east. The disciples of the true martial sacred ground were dressed in matching robes, blue garments fluttering in the wind. Their faces were filled with excitement, and at the front stood Willow Ancestor and Wang Hengji. At their sides were Primal Mountain Emperor, Ouyang Qi and Zhang Wu. Directly ahead, the dragon-shaped treasure ship lay across the open space like a living dragon. Depart! Someone shouted. Under Willow Ancestor's lead, everyone began boarding the ship. Suzimo walked through the air and landed at the dragon's head. With a thunderous rumble, the treasure ship sped toward the Yu God clan. To the onlookers, it might have seemed amusing, a small treasure ship daring to claim it would destroy the 10 god clans. The ship's speed was extremely fast, one of the fastest ancient warships left behind by the ancient dragon god empire. It traveled across the sky for nearly 3 weeks. On this day, as usual, the ship raced forward above the heavens. The surrounding skies were cloudless for miles, but the weather grew gloomy, and a light drizzle fell. The disciples stood on deck, gazing outward. Suddenly someone pointed at the distant horizon and shouted, Look! There's a mountain, Pupil Mountain. Have we arrived? Everyone was drawn to the sight and moved to the rail. Because the sky was dim, a faint silhouette of a towering peak appeared on the horizon through the thick clouds. Pupil Mountain was known as the tallest peak of the Northwest, so it could only be that. We've reached the Yu God clan's territory? I wonder what the 10 god clans look like. Everyone felt both curious and nervous. After all, these were the 10 god clans, the peak of this world. Suzimo, however, remained seated at the dragon's head with his eyes closed, unmoved even as fierce winds battered him during the ship's flight. Be careful, he warned calmly. The moment the words left his mouth, thunder exploded across the sky. A gray bolt of lightning struck down, shattering the heavens. The blast broke off a corner of the ship. Everyone stay alert, Willow Ancestor shouted. Who dares ambush us? His sharp gaze swept across the sky, but no one appeared. Only endless thunder churned above. More bolts roared, as if trying to completely destroy the treasure ship. Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes. He raised his right hand, power surging in his palm, and with a single strike he shattered the void. Several figures tumbled out from the broken space, some wearing yellow robes, some white, some purple, and more continued emerging from deeper within the void. Seeing them, Willow Ancestor's eyes narrowed. He recognized most of the faces. Supreme Golden City, Hidden Immortal Palace, Qilin Villa, Dark Holy Sect. These were the sects affiliated with the Yu God Clan, its subordinate forces. Their presence here needed no explanation. They were here to intercept the true martial sacred ground. Still, Willow Ancestor asked, "What is the meaning of this, everyone?" "Willow, long time no see," someone said with a laugh. It was Wang Chuanshang, the city lord of Supreme Golden City. "This road is closed. Best to turn back." "You intend to block us?" Willow Ancestor asked. "We're not blocking anything. But if the true martial sacred ground insists on its foolish path, we'll simply destroy you," said Ming Junzi of Tiangang sect. "Then try it," Willow Ancestor replied coldly. "Willow, it's not that we look down on you, you're just too weak. Have your ancestor come out," Wang Chuanshang said. As he spoke, Grand Emperor pressure burst from his body, soaring into the sky. One after another, the leaders of the 7 other sects unleashed their own imperial auras. 8 Grand Emperors, these were the strongest attached to the Yu God Clan. Seeing this, Willow Ancestor and the others stiffened inwardly. It was overwhelming. For the current true martial sacred ground, aside from the Ancestor, they were no match at all. Willow Ancestor looked toward Su Zimo. "Kill them all," Su Zimo said mildly. Hearing Su Zimo's words, Willow Ancestor looked around, then gathered everyone, preparing to retreat despite their fear. But Su Zimo's voice sounded again. "I didn't tell you to make a move." A towering wave of demonic energy surged skyward. Paimon stepped out from within it, walking through the air as the aura around him grew denser and more oppressive. "Greetings, my lord," Paimon said. "Kill them," Su Zimo ordered. Paimon hovered above, looking down at the 8 enemies. His overwhelming presence pressed down like a mountain. The 8 immediately felt their shoulders sink, their spirit power grinding to a halt. Paimon brought down a colossal demonic palm. It blotted out the sky, magic roaring like thunder. The 8 men paled. Each revealed their true fate and unleashed their strongest attacks. Void Leap, Martial Heaven Sword Force, Immortal Art, Grace of Heaven. Every strike carried immense force, enough to drown the heavens. They hammered against Paimon's demonic palm, yet nothing changed. When the giant palm descended, the void exploded. The 8 were crushed within it. "Run!" Wang Chuanshang shouted. Among the 8, 4 erupted with desperate power and narrowly escaped with their lives. The remaining 4 were crushed instantly. Once free, the survivors cried out, "Demi-demon, save us. We accept your terms." The moment their voices fell, a massive pressure rippled through the void. Waves of demon-beast energy swept in like a tornado. From within, a figure slowly emerged. Saintly might poured from him, shaking the sky. It was an old man in a gray robe, a long tail behind him bristling with spikes. His head was that of a serpent, a large gem embedded on his crown. "Is that the demi-demon serpent sovereign?" someone exclaimed. "That's right, one of the few wandering saint sovereigns in the absolute God heaven," another said. "He once destroyed several sections, a true killer. Then he disappeared for years, and now he shows up again. With a saint sovereign stepping in, this just got interesting." Many whispered among themselves. The true martial sacred grounds movements had long been monitored. Lesser factions followed the treasure ship. Stronger ones watched from afar. The demi-demon serpent sovereign stared coldly at Paimon and said with a faint smile, "Friend, would you give me some face? I'll be taking these men under my protection." "What are you supposed to be? Why should I give you face?" Paimon replied bluntly. The serpent sovereign's smile darkened. His massive tail cracked through the sky with a thunderous boom. "I want peace," he said. "Not because I fear you, simply because I don't want trouble. But if you insist on fighting, I will accompany you to the end. My Lord's command is everything I act upon. If you try to stop me, I'll cut you down," Paimon said coldly. Demonic energy surged around him. He stepped forward, a kick wrapped in endless demonic force crashing down toward the Serpent Sovereign. The Serpent Sovereign hissed sharply, spitting his forked tongue. With a sweep of his hand, a powerful blast erupted, trying to blow Paimon away. But Paimon's strength far exceeded his expectations. Not only did the Serpent Sovereign fail to knock Paimon back, he was stomped into the ground instead, hurled downward like a meteor. A deafening crash followed. A massive crater appeared, bottomless and dark. "Damn you!" the Serpent Sovereign roared. From within the pit, a giant serpent with 9 heads burst out, power surging around it. Each head exuded a chilling aura of death. 9 torrents of force shot toward Paimon. Paimon only sneered. "A mere eternal overlord dares to block my path?" He flashed forward, extending a massive demonic claw. In an instant, he was behind the 9-headed serpent. 1 claw, 1 head like slicing melons. In moments, 8 heads were severed. The serpent was terrified and furious. It writhed wildly, then coiled its thick tail around Paimon, trying to crush him. A childish thought. Paimon tore free effortlessly. The serpent's tail exploded under the force. His demonic claw landed on the final head. With a terrified thud, the serpent collapsed to the ground. That last head was its lifeline, the only one that truly mattered. Could regrow the others, but if the final one was taken, even survival would be a luxury. The serpent begged for mercy. Paimon ignored it. His claw descended, crushing the last head and twisting it off. A boom echoed as a fountain of blood sprayed from the neck. The watching crowd was horrified. A Saint Sovereign slain just like that. Even those who thought they had already overestimated the true martial sacred ground now realized they hadn't. And this Paimon, none had seen him before. People began to speculate. Was Su Zimo truly the only ancestor of the sect? After killing the Serpent Sovereign, Paimon hung the severed head in the air, placing it on the dragon ship's head. Then he slowly turned toward the 4 surviving faction leaders. They dared not hesitate. They tried to flee, but the falling demonic aura consumed everything. They struggled briefly before being dragged into the darkness, leaving no remains behind. Su Zimo waved his hand. The space around Paimon twisted, and he returned to the god world. Even the disciples of the true martial sacred ground were stunned speechless. "Let's go. We should reach the Yu God clan before dark," Su Zimo said. His voice finally pulled everyone back to their senses. "Yes." Everyone replied with firm nods after hearing Su Zimo's command. With the roadblockers eliminated, though they could hardly even be called that, more like ants trying to stop a chariot, the people of the true martial sacred ground once again rode the dragon-shaped treasure ship toward the distant horizon. After about a full day's journey, they finally arrived at the Yu God clan's territory. The Yu God clan city was vast, so large that the end could not be seen at a glance. The walls stretched endlessly, winding like a great serpent, resembling an ancient great wall disappearing into the heavens. The walls were old, representing the long history of the 10 god clans, standing as monuments built alongside the Yu God clan throughout the ages. The prosperity of this city exceeded imagination. One could say that any city established by the 10 god clans automatically became the most flourishing region of the absolute god heaven. Even entire god realms could not compare in size. The city walls were enormous, 3 layers thick, according to rumors. Even a grand emperor would struggle to break through them. Su Zimo raised his head slightly. Standing on the treasure ship, he gazed down at the majestic city. Then he instructed, "Announce our challenge." "I'll go," Xiaoanan volunteered immediately. She stepped into the air, rising above Yu City. She called out clearly, "The true martial sacred ground has come to destroy the Yu God clan. Let the Yu God clan's god lord come out and face us." "Oh?" Little girl, you certainly know how to boast. A voice chuckled from the side. A man clad in golden battle armor stepped forward. He shone like the sun itself, the golden plates on his body radiating ancient brilliance. His gaze was sharp as he looked at Xiao Anan, and without warning he thrust his spear toward her. Xiao Anan narrowly dodged the strike. With a deafening boom, a section of the sky shattered, and violent spatial turbulence erupted. The power contained in that single blow was terrifying. This man was a sovereign lord, only one step away from becoming a saint sovereign. The Yu God clan truly lived up to their name. Even a mere gatekeeper held the strength of a sovereign lord. He looked at Xiao Anan and mocked. Such a big mouth for someone who only knows how to run. Xiao Anan snorted coldly and prepared to fight, but Willow Ancestor pulled her back. Your strength is insufficient, he said. Even with the true martial sword at your side, you would struggle against a sovereign lord. Don't act recklessly. Xiao Anan could only retreat in frustration. The golden-armored general turned toward the dragon-shaped treasure ship. The rest of you are nothing but rabble, he said disdainfully. We haven't even bothered placing you in our eyes. Have the true martial sacred grounds ancestor come out. After speaking, he swept both his hands outward. A massive formation rose before Yu City, enveloping the entire wall. Great power pulsed within it. Yellow sand filled the sky, and surging currents of formation energy flowed violently, smashing everything in their path. This was a formation, and clearly not a simple one. Its yellow sands carried corrosive power. Su Zimo walked out slowly. Stepping through the air, he said, "You all stand back and observe from afar. This battle has nothing to do with you. Ancestor, be careful," Willow Ancestor said anxiously as he and the others withdrew. Seeing Su Zimo appear, the golden-armored general spoke. "This is the heaven-extinguishing wind formation, the Yu God clan's guardian formation. If you can break it, then enter our city and face us." He retreated several steps, then waved his hand. The sands churned wildly, filling the formation with endless storms. "Breaking this formation is hardly difficult," Su Zimo said with a smile. He stepped into the formation. Instantly, countless storms roared toward him, as if intent on tearing him apart. "Playing with wind against me?" Su Zimo laughed. He had inherited the legacy of ancient wind god Tianwu. In terms of mastering wind, he considered himself second to none. He lifted his hand, and the primal Tao of wind swirled around him, turning his form almost ethereal. The gales tore past his body harmlessly, failing to leave even a mark. Instead, with a gesture, he seemed to become the embodiment of the wind itself, controlling every storm within the formation. The raging winds became as docile as sheep before him. Standing at the center of the tempest, Su Zimo said calmly, his voice drifting like the wind, "I am the storm. What need is there to speak of breaking the formation?" With another wave, the countless winds moved with him, and the overwhelming gale shattered the formation's foundation. He stepped out amid howling winds. The sky darkened, clouds rolling as if the heavens themselves were trembling. With a sweeping motion, he unleashed a tornado that surged toward the city wall. The golden-armored general paled as he watched the approaching storm, which turned the world black like an apocalypse. He retreated rapidly. The storm reached the wall first. The supposedly impenetrable wall, said to withstand even a grand emperor's assault, crumbled instantly. Stones flew, bricks shattered, and everything nearby was reduced to ruins. The destructive force was terrifying. When the storm finally died down, an entire section of Yu City's wall had been obliterated, and the nearby buildings lay in rubble. Su Zimo descended like a sovereign of the heavens. Another burst of storm force struck the area where the golden-armored general stood. He tried to flee, unleashing his imperial might, but it was pointless. The storm tore through him effortlessly. His golden armor shattered into fragments, revealing his true appearance. The general's face changed drastically. He cried out, "My lords, save me!" But the hidden powers watching from the shadows remained silent. No one cared. The storm shredded his body completely. He never emerged again. Only after his death did a faint, cold snort echo through the air. The Yu God clan has no need for useless trash. As the voice faded, several figures appeared faintly, materializing in the void. The 8 ancestors of Pupil Mountain stand here to face you. 8 gray-robed elders floated in the sky. Their combined auras merged together, fusing with the very heavens. At the center of each elder's forehead was an eye, triangular in shape, strange and unsettling, containing a power that made one's heart tremble. The 8 elders formed a line, blocking the path forward. A few rotten old relics on the verge of death think they can stop me? Su Zimo sneered. Whether we can kill you or not, we'll learn only by fighting. The 8 ancestors of Pupil Mountain replied coldly. At that moment, the attention of the entire Absolute God Heaven was fixed on this battle. Not only the other major clans among the 10 God clans, but countless mid-sized and minor forces were watching closely. Legendary cultivators, ancient beings, even those who had sealed themselves away in coffins, everyone understood that the outcome of this confrontation would determine the future of the entire domain. Without exaggeration, this was a life-and-death battle for the Absolute God Heaven. Would the 10 God clans remain invincible, ruling this era? Or would the true martial sacred ground return in full force, fulfill their former ambition, and forge a new age? A new chapter was about to open. Su Zimo lifted his head slightly, looking at the 8 ancestors of Pupil Mountain. The 8 shared one origin. Their auras merged together, their movements perfectly synchronized. They descended from the sky, charging directly toward him. He snorted, and the blade Shadow Tyrant spun in a full arc before striking. Around the 8 elders, a vague mountain manifestation flickered into view. Pupil Mountain, their shared true fate. Su Zimo's blade energy crashed into the mountain. It paused for only an instant before dissipating entirely. The 8 elders stood unscathed. Interesting, Su Zimo said with a small smile. The 8 elders surged forward again. Their combined power, along with the manifested mountain peak, slammed into him like an unstoppable force. With a thunderous boom, Su Zimo felt the impact crash against his blade, forcing him back several steps. Pupil Mountain was indeed indestructible. To speak of Pupil Mountain was to speak of the 8 elders' origins. It was said that long ago, 8 spirit pearls fell from the heavens. Those who traced their aura discovered that these pearls were the remnants of an infinite Tao-level being, the Pupil Mountain True God. The 8 pearls were formed from the eye at his brow after his death. Not only did they contain spirit resonance, they also inherited the aura of the mountain where the true God resided. These elders did not each possess an individual fate. Rather, they shared one true fate, the Pupil Mountain. The mountain was divided into 8, giving them 8 bodies yet one life. When all 8 combined their true fate and manifested Pupil Mountain in full, their defensive and offensive power reached the highest tier. Simply knocking Su Zimo back was a trivial matter. The 8 elders snorted together. Their true fate became fully solid, ripping through space as it descended to suppress him. Su Zimo lifted his gaze. The blade intent of the 8-fold sky split surged out of him, shattering everything in its path. Shadow Tyrant roared like a beast, devouring all, the force of sky rending surging outward. Thunderous detonations echoed as the sky-split blade intent collided with the falling Pupil Mountain. For a moment they held each other in deadlock. But Su Zimo's power continued to rise, climbing higher and higher. Cracks soon began to spread across the mountain's surface. Light seeped through the fractures. The 8 elders' expressions changed. "Not good," one of them shouted. They attempted to recall Pupil Mountain. After all, it was their fate. If it shattered, their fate shattered, and with it their lives. But Su Zimo did not allow them the chance. His blade intent surged. Shadow Tyrant expanded to 1,000 meters, cutting across the sky in a single sweeping arc. Thunder boomed as the strike split the heavens. The blade intent gathered like a mighty river, raging across the firmament like the galaxy itself. The colossal Pupil Mountain finally shattered completely. Blood trailed from the corners of the 8 elders' mouths. Their faces paled as they staggered. "Is that all you've got?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. "Is the Yu God clan looking down on me so much that they send out old chickens like you to challenge me?" Hearing his scorn, anger flared in the 8 elders' eyes. "We kill you and that will be enough," they shouted. The triangular pupils on their brows suddenly opened wide, as if something ancient awakened within them. Endless pupil light surged from all 8 brow eyes. Above the battlefield, the 8 lights converged into a single massive eye suspended in the sky. The eye gazed down upon heaven and earth, capturing all of Yu City within its sight. "Heaven-sealing gaze," the 8 elders roared together. From the eyes on their brows burst 8 torrents of power. The streams merged, condensing into the divine, sky-born eye. With a deafening boom, the divine eye released a beam infused with the decay of time, the crushing of samsara, the force of life and death. Wherever the light passed, everything aged and rotted. It forced all living things into death, and even contained a sealing force that could imprison the body for eternity. The divine gaze moved faster than lightning. It fell upon Su Zimo instantly, aiming to snatch away his life. Life, death, unfortunately. I've walked that path farther than you ever have. Su Zimo smiled lightly. Behind him, the tree of life rose. The so-called power of death was insignificant before its endless vitality. Could not harm him at all. As for the sealing force, Su Zimo shattered it with a single punch. The void broke like a mirror. The 8 elders were thrown backwards. A group of old fossils long overdue for burial. "Allow me to send you off." Su Zimo spoke calmly. Shadow Tyrant swept across the sky, severing all 8 heads like stalks of wheat. A moment later, the flame of Zhurong ignited, reducing their bodies to ash. Su Zimo raised his voice and called out, "You God Clan, send someone competent. Don't embarrass yourselves." He lifted his hand, and a massive portion of Yu City was ripped from the ground. Countless buildings collapsed. He had come today to annihilate the Yu God Clan, to destroy all of Yu City. Fire and storm ravaged the city. Chaos erupted everywhere. Yet despite this devastation, the Yu God Clan remained calm. No one shouted in rage. Only a single figure appeared, stepping forward along a 7-star chess pattern emerging from within the city. Su Zimo could tell at a glance it was only a projection, not the true body. The figure in the 7-star formation advanced. "Your strength puts us all to shame," the figure stepping out of the 7-star board said with a light laugh. "I shouldn't be the one stopping you, but the God Lord has given the order. Even if an infinite Tao true God descended today, I would still have to fight to the death. This is the Yu God Clan's command. Our lives were born for the Yu God Clan." Su Zimo studied the man. He wore a long purple robe marked with interwoven black and white chess patterns. The high collar framed his face, and his long hair spilled loosely, half of it draping down to cover one of his eyes. So this was their plan, wave after wave to wear him down. Su Zimo looked unimpressed. The man introduced himself. "I am the 7-star Saint Sovereign. Here between heaven and earth, I have laid out a 7-star chess formation. I invite you to enter and take a look." "I don't like playing chess," Su Zimo said, grinning. "Why bother entering your board? I destroy it, kill you, and save myself the trouble. Wasting time is pointless." Hearing this, the 7-star Saint Sovereign's tone turned cold. "Whether you wish to enter or not is not yours to decide." "Chess Dominion!" he shouted, sweeping his hand. A massive chessboard manifested around him, covering the heavens as it fell. Its vast presence sealed the sky, leaving Su Zimo nowhere to escape. Lines spread across the board, vertical and horizontal, forming a grid that stretched in all directions. Su Zimo and the 7-star Saint Sovereign became the black and white pieces placed upon it. "I am the master of this board. I control everything." A strange force enveloped Su Zimo, pulling him into the formation. Power fluctuations surged around him. When he looked up, a rain of meteors fell from the sky, Closer inspection revealed they were not meteors at all. They were countless black and white chess pieces descending like a storm. Every falling piece carried destructive force powerful enough to level the heavens. Su Zimo raised his hand. His aura surged upward, shielding the sky itself. Then he punched forward. His punch shot upward like a rainbow piercing the sun, blowing a hole straight through the vault of the heavens. Millions of chess pieces shattered under that single strike. He shifted his gaze, lifting Shadow Tyrant. The blade's force rippled outward. He immediately targeted the weakness of the formation. The seven-star chess was intricate beyond measure. Most people couldn't even comprehend it, let alone find its flaw. But for Su Zimo, a sage monarch, seeing through it was effortless. His eyes narrowed. Shadow Tyrant cleaved toward one corner of the chessboard. A thunderous boom followed. The blade energy tore through the formation, ripping the void apart and opening a crack. Su Zimo stepped out of the rupture. He looked straight at the seven-star Saint Sovereign. In a single step, the space behind him split into streaks of shadow as he appeared right before his opponent. "Seven-star sword!" the Saint Sovereign shouted in panic. A sword glowing with 7 starlights appeared in his hand and slashed toward Su Zimo. Shadow Tyrant collided with the sword. Power shook the air like a cyclone. But Su Zimo still held the advantage. Shadow Tyrant severed the 7-star sword and slammed into the Saint Sovereign. Yet the man's movement technique was sharp. His body dissolved into 2 black streaks that circled around Su Zimo. The black and white streaks then erupted into countless chess pieces that surrounded him. The pieces exploded, black and white detonations interlocking like opposing poles. "Ridiculous," Su Zimo said. The space before him twisted. He tore it open, not only slipping free of the blast but reappearing at the Saint Sovereign's side. His blade rose and fell. With a soft sound, the 7-star Saint Sovereign's head flew off. Blood sprayed as his body plummeted. Su Zimo followed with a kick, blowing the body apart midair. "Let's go. I hope the God clan doesn't disappoint us," Su Zimo said. Behind him, Willow Ancestor and the others followed closely. City was divided into an outer and inner city. What they had entered earlier was only the outer district. The inner city was restricted to direct and collateral descendants of the God clan. And the God clan was not to be underestimated. After hundreds of millions of years, the clan had grown so enormous it bordered on bloated. Originally, every descendant was considered noble. But as their numbers swelled, bloodline became commonplace. In the inner city, one could meet a descendant just by walking down a street. In time, only the direct line retained true status. Collateral branches became indistinguishable from ordinary people. When Su Zimo arrived at the inner city gates, he saw the wall, not tall, but heavy and thick with a grounded, oppressive aura. 3 old men sat atop it. Their presence alone suppressed an entire region of the sky. A closer look revealed that each of them appeared half-human, half-beast. On the left sat one resembling a bronze lion, round eyes glaring, hair curled into tight spirals. On the right, a red figure with a single horn on his head, looking much like the mythical Pishio. The one in the middle needed no description. He was almost identical to a Qilin, a human body supporting a Qilin's head. The 3 sat cross-legged, endless demonic chi churning around them. Their power filled the air. When Su Zimo approached, the Qilin elder opened his eyes first. He said with a soft laugh, "Turn back. This road leads only to death." "A road to send you 3 to death, you mean?" Su Zimo replied with a grin. Many hidden observers were stunned. "It's the 3 ancient beasts, Copper Lion, Pishio, and Qilin. These 3 have guarded the inner city for millions of years. Not once has an uprising occurred. Anyone who tried to break into the inner city became one of their corpses. This is getting interesting. Let's see if the ancestor of the true martial sacred ground can get past them." All 3 are supreme giants. While the crowd watched eagerly, Su Zimo remained unfazed. He leveled his blade at the 3 and asked, "Is this where you chose to bury yourselves?" The 3 instantly erupted in fury. "Arrogant brat, You show a little strength and already lose sight of yourself. Look carefully at where you stand. This is Yu City. How could a stubborn child like you behave so wildly here? The Bronze Lion Elder said with a cold snort. That's right, the Pishio Elder added. You think you're so strong, but it's only because you don't understand how vast heaven and earth truly are. Today, this place will become your burial ground. May this battle once again remind the world that the 10 God clans cannot be offended. Any who challenge our dignity are to be killed without mercy, the Qilin Elder finished. The three slapped the stone beneath them. The massive inner-city wall exploded as countless pieces of black crystal shattered. The wall was forged entirely of black crystal, and yet it burst apart under their power. The three elders rose into the air, forming a triangle as they surrounded Su Zimo. Bronze Lion, seal the heavens, the Lion Elder roared. Gray beams shot from his eyes, sealing the world around Su Zimo. Space froze. Movement became impossible. Next, the Pishio Elder opened his mouth wide. Heaven and earth are not eternal. All things have flaws. I too contain flaw, and therefore I am heaven and earth. Devour true fate. Never see daylight again, the Pishio Elder bellowed. The Lion Elder's confinement locked Su Zimo in place, and the Pishio Elder's devouring force tugged at his true fate. Everyone knew the Pishio devoured all things. Nothing escaped it. But as the Pishio Elder tried to pull out Su Zimo's true fate, he was stunned. It wouldn't budge. How could he know that Su Zimo's true fate was the God world? A world unto itself. Forget a mere Pishio. Even an infinite Tao powerhouse couldn't shake a large planet. To Su Zimo, the devouring force was like a mayfly trying to move a mountain. This child is strange, the Pishio Elder said with a frown. Let me try, the Qilin Elder said, stepping forward. Within his gaze surged the aura of a king among beasts. Though Qilin were auspicious creatures, the aura from this elder was filled with destruction and death. His eyes flared like divine lights and shot out beams of death. A ray pierced straight through Su Zimo's chest. Got him, the Pishio Elder said excitedly. No. The Qilin Elder shook his head grimly. He swept his hand again, releasing several more death rays, each containing the power to annihilate the void. They passed through Su Zimo's body, but somehow still failed to hit him. What's going on? The onlookers cried in confusion. The Bronze Lion Elder suddenly realized it. No, I sealed a false body, he shouted in shock. Everyone turned. A second Su Zimo stood calmly behind them in the sky, smiling faintly. How did you get out? The Lion Elder demanded. Why would I need to escape? Su Zimo replied. If I wish to leave, I leave. A tiny void prison like that, how could it trap me? Forget a bronze lion. Even a true god beast couldn't hold me. The Lion Elder snorted coldly. Su Zimo's words were arrogant, but he could not refute them. The three elders exchanged looks. Infernal energy surged violently from their bodies. In that case, let's reveal our trump card. No need to waste more time, the Qilin Elder said. Power erupted from all three. Behind each, their true forms appeared, roaring as they manifested. The bronze lion shook its massive body, its roar rippling across the land. The Pishio streaked forth like burning crimson light. The Qilin stood tall above the firmament, radiating kingly might. Then fusion. Descent of the heavenly demon. Combine the ferocious beasts. Their true forms twisted together, merging in an unnatural way. Three beasts became one. A massive abomination with three heads. Lion, Pishio, and Qilin. Its body was a crude combination of all three. The heavenly demon's aura skyrocketed, several times stronger than before. Still just a supreme giant, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. No matter how you struggle, the weak remain weak. He stepped forward and kicked directly at the heavenly demon. The abomination roared, raising its claws to defend while its two wings spun like blades, tearing through space as they slashed toward him. One defensive, one offensive. Su Zimo snorted. As he stepped down with his right foot, Shadow Tyrant rose before him, carrying world-rending blade intent that sliced toward the wings. Thunder boomed. The blade pressure shattered both wings on the spot. Suzumo's kick exploded the Pisho head. But in that instant, the lion head lunged and bit down on his right leg, trying to tear it off. "Get lost," Suzumo growled, planting Shadow Tyrant into the void. He seized the lion head with both hands. The Chilean head lunged to bite him, fangs wide. Suzumo struck it with a brutal punch. With a bang, the Chilean head snapped sideways. The lion's jaws were ripped apart, its upper and lower jaw torn wide. Suzumo drove his fist into its mouth, punching through flesh and bone. The lion head died instantly. He turned his gaze toward the last remaining Chilean head. The heavenly demon, now half destroyed, plummeted from the sky, roaring as it crashed into the inner city wall. The massive body carved a crater into the black crystal fortifications. Everyone's eyes fixed on the hole. Moments later, all three beast elders spat blood simultaneously, their true fates shattered. Then Suzumo emerged from the crater, dragging the colossal heavenly demon corpse with one hand. He tossed it aside like a mere object. The corpse smashed into the three elders and sent them flying into the ruined wall. The inner city's barrier collapsed entirely. Many spectators were buried under the falling debris. Suzumo slowly lifted his head. Like a demon king walking out of an apocalypse, he stepped from the ruins and entered the inner city. He stared ahead at the towering mountain that pierced the heavens, the Pupil Mountain, so tall its peak could not be seen. He let out a cold laugh. "You God Clan, are you prepared to meet death?" As he stepped into the inner city, countless beams of immortal light rose from U Mountain, no fewer than 50,000. Each light represented a saint sovereign. The sheer force of the immortal light shocked everyone. Each powerhouse stepped into the air, their overwhelming power blanketing the world. 50,000 saint sovereigns, just saying it sounded absurd. And this was only the U God Clan. If all 10 God Clans gathered together, the number of cultivators was unimaginable. 50,000 streaks of immortal light erupted from U Mountain. A thunderous rumble echoed across the heavens. The entire sky fell silent because these 50,000 saint sovereigns now dominated everything. Countless auras soared upward. Each saint sovereign cultivated a different primal Tao. The sky was awash in countless colors like rainbows and neon lights. The primal Taos numbered in the millions. They differed, yet all led to the same end, each with its own merit. At their forefront stood the God Lord of the U God Clan, the primordial mountain sage monarch. A massive, ancient mountain rose behind him, his aura thick and heavy. Just by standing there, his aura suppressed an entire region of the heavens. He resembled a true god. His gaze pierced through hearts. His presence blanketed everything and crushed everything. His voice carried a faint echo. "Those who offend the U God Clan must die. You people really have nothing new to say," Suzumo replied with a light shake of his head, smiling. "Not even a bit of originality." "Who are you?" the primordial mountain sage monarch asked. "Since when did the true martial sacred ground have someone like you among its old ancestors? You seem quite familiar with the true martial sacred ground," Suzumo said. "At least more familiar than you. Outsider, you should never have interfered with these matters," the primordial mountain sage monarch replied. "But it no longer matters. Since you came, you can stay here forever." He waved his hand. "Everyone, lend me your strength. Kill this fiend. End everything that began today." "Yes, my lord." Tens of thousands of saint sovereigns behind him shouted in unison. Their battle cries tore into the sky, echoing endlessly through the void. Tens of thousands of saint sovereigns charged toward Suzumo at the same time. Metal primal Tao, wood primal Tao, lightning primal Tao, wind primal Tao, cloud primal Tao of destruction, countless primal Taos ignited around each saint sovereign. Their combined attacks came down like a tidal wave, sweeping toward Suzumo. The power crushed mountains and obliterated everything in its path. Suzumo raised his hands to block, but the overwhelming force still blasted him away. "Imperial Ancestor," Wang Hengji shouted anxiously. No one goes near, Elder Willow barked. But the Imperial Ancestor. Wang Hengji hesitated. What's the point of you going? You'd only be throwing your life away for nothing. Willow snapped back. Though he was deeply worried about Su Zimo, he still kept his reason. Trust the Imperial Ancestor. If he dared to come annihilate the Yu God clan, he's definitely far beyond this. Everyone stared toward the direction Su Zimo had been sent flying. The power of 50,000 Saint Sovereigns was too great, strong enough to tear apart space and time. Su Zimo had been sent flying through space and into another dimension. Suddenly, a pair of hands ripped open the void, and Su Zimo stepped out once more. The primordial mountain sage monarch sneered. I thought you were something special. Turns out you're only good at empty boasting. No need to rush, Su Zimo said with a faint smile. An endless tide of demonic energy rose from his body. The sky, already dim, was dyed completely black. Demonic clouds churned above him. His hell-suppressing demon physique activated. His hair turned blood red. Dark violet markings spread from his forehead down to his neck. Ancient demon race? The primordial mountain sage monarch exclaimed. Since when did the true martial sacred ground consort with demons? So what if you're a demon? Another Saint Sovereign, Vast Sun, scoffed. You alone think you can challenge all of us? They didn't understand, and Su Zimo grinned. His laughter rolled across the heavens. I can't wait to crush every one of you beneath my feet, to gnaw on your corpses, to soak my hands in blood. He raised Shadow Tyrant and stepped into the air. Kill! In one instant he appeared before the primordial mountain sage monarch. His blade slashed down. The primordial mountain sage monarch scoffed and punched toward the blade. But he underestimated Su Zimo's power. His fist was sliced in half instantly. You're dead! The primordial mountain sage monarch roared. Get lost! Su Zimo replied coldly. Another slash fell. Blade intent tore across the heavens, sweeping demonic might before it. The primordial mountain sage monarch's face changed. His primordial mountain true fate manifested, unleashing crushing power as it descended toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo raised his left hand, propping up half the sky. With one hand he held up the mountain. With the other, he grabbed the primordial mountain sage monarch by the collar and slammed him across the void. Assist me! The primordial mountain sage monarch shouted. But Su Zimo moved even faster. He flipped the mountain over, smashed it into the ground, and drove his right fist into the primordial mountain sage monarch's face. The Saint Sovereign's entire face caved in. His head exploded. For a Saint Sovereign, losing a head wasn't a fatal injury. But the humiliation was immense. After all, he was the God Lord of the Yu God clan. Several Saint Sovereigns rushed over and pulled him out. But before they could act, Su Zimo had already charged into their ranks. He punched downward. The sky split apart. A mushroom cloud rose slowly. Kill! 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 Thousands of Saint Sovereigns tore through the sky, dodging, counterattacking. Explosions echoed through the heavens. The spectators could barely see anything, only streaks of figures flashing through the void at impossible speed. Every now and then, another world-shaking explosion erupted. Su Zimo stomped through the air, charging toward the Saint Sovereigns on the left, Ragefire Saint Sovereign, Cold Water Saint Sovereign, and beside them the Shocking Thunder Saint Sovereign. Their primal Tao complemented each other. Water and fire, and lightning amplified by water. Seeing Su Zimo approach, the three reacted calmly. Water and fire primal Tao surged forth. Despite the saying water and fire do not mix, the two merged perfectly, forming a powerful barrier. Then Shocking Thunder sent lightning through the water, amplifying the attack. Lightning burst out alongside fire, exploding before Su Zimo. But before he could rejoice, Shadow Tyrant blocked the strike with the flat of its blade. Then another slash swept forward, sending the lightning and flames right back at them. Dodge now! Shocking Thunder Saint Sovereign shouted. But it was already too late. A series of thunderous explosions echoed as lightning and fire detonated against the barrier in the void. The cold water Saint Sovereign and the rage fire Saint Sovereign felt their bodies sink. When the explosive force erupted, it struck both of them hard and sent them crashing downward. Su Zimo stepped into the air and instantly appeared beside the shocking Thunder Saint Sovereign. The Thunder Saint Sovereign's face changed, and he retreated rapidly, turning himself into streaks of lightning. But Su Zimo was faster. He intercepted the lightning form in an instant. Then came a swift hooking kick to his jaw, followed by a spinning motion. "Goodbye," Su Zimo said with a cold smile. Shadow Tyrant slid across his back and stabbed brutally into the Thunder Saint's heart. The heart burst into pieces, and the Thunder Saint's entire body exploded apart. Next, Su Zimo growled. He turned once more and charged into another cluster of Saint Sovereigns. This time, 8 of them stood directly before him. These 8 cultivated the most extreme primal Daos: destruction, immortality, death, space, light, gravity, curse, and summoning. The 8 primal Daos surged around them like raging torrents. The 8 Saint Sovereigns stood tall and imposing, blocking Su Zimo's path. "I'll sever you myself," the Space Saint Sovereign declared as he attacked. He grabbed at the air, condensing space itself. The void froze. Space solidified around Su Zimo as if massive forces were squeezing it like a sponge. But this force was far beyond any sponge. The Space Saint tried to crush Su Zimo within the constricted void. Su Zimo roared angrily and punched downward, shattering the frozen space. His blade followed, tearing through the heavens. The Space Saint spread his hands wide, erecting layers of spatial barriers, but he was still not strong enough. With the might of a sage monarch and the storm of demonic energy swirling around him, Su Zimo cleaved through all spatial barriers and split the Space Saint Sovereign in half. Seeing this, the other Saint Sovereigns trembled slightly. The Space Saint's strength was on par with theirs, yet he had been cut down instantly. "He cannot be fought alone. We attack together," the cursed Saint Sovereign said. He began chanting, "All things age and rot. All powers become nothing. Birth, age, sickness, death. Curse all to emptiness." The Death Saint Sovereign stepped forward as well. Death Primal Tao coiled around his arm, and clouds of death surged around him. "I am death itself. I strip away life. D." With a thunderous boom, a torrent of death engulfed Su Zimo completely. Death and curse washed over everything. "It's not enough. Nowhere near enough." A surge of demonic energy burst out from Su Zimo's body, stretching across the entire sea of death and curses. With another punch and slash, the void exploded. Both the curse and death saints were blasted away, tumbling uncontrollably. Su Zimo seemed to revel in the battle. With sage monarch might and roaring demonic energy, he charged at the remaining Saint Sovereigns. The Gravity Saint swept his right hand. Gravity of the world, the majesty of heaven and earth. Countless gravitational forces descended, not dozens or hundreds of times normal gravity, but the true infinite power of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth's force could suppress anything. Human strength had limits. The earth's did not. Su Zimo felt his entire body sink. A vast pressure surged over him. For a moment, he felt as though he were fighting the heavens themselves, an endless weight threatening to crush his limbs, bones, and organs. He roared and strained, trying to break free from the boundless suppression. "Light corrosion," the Light Saint Sovereign intoned, stepping forward. He shone like a blazing sun. Endless radiance poured from him, not simply illumination, but purification. "You carry sin. Evil must be devoured by light and enter the heavenly kingdom." His true fate manifested, a kingdom of light. It was only a projected illusion, yet within it countless visions flickered. 1,000,000 Buddhas standing, radiant pendulums swinging, holy lights rising, sacred scriptures turning as multitudes recited them. The kingdom of light descended, attempting to purify and assimilate Su Zimo. Su Zimo felt an overwhelming comfort. His pores opened, greedily absorbing the power of light. It created the illusion that he should abandon himself to the radiance and become part of it. "I am a demon," You think this little light can convert me? You're 10,000 years too early. He laughed loudly. His expression calmed, and divine light burst from his eyes. Supported by the hell-suppressing demon physique, demonic energy surged upward and crashed into the kingdom of light. Ah! The light Saint Sovereign screamed. Demonic energy wrapped around him. He had intended to purify Su Zimo, but instead was being corroded by Su Zimo's infernal power. It devoured his light and threatened to drag him into darkness. The other Saint Sovereigns instinctively backed away. The light Saint Sovereign writhed and roared. He collapsed to the ground as the light in his body faded, until finally he was completely consumed by darkness. Don't be scared. Come again. Su Zimo charged back into the group of Saint Sovereigns. Each punch and kick sent thunder rolling across the heavens. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Though he was covered in blood, Su Zimo felt as if he had been born for battle. Every part of him sang with exhilaration. The spectators were completely stunned. Su Zimo seemed impossible to kill. The tree of life constantly restored him. Ancient wood god Jumong's inheritance healed him to the point of near resurrection. With both powers at once, Su Zimo could fight freely without the slightest restraint. He tore through the encirclement of thousands of Saint Sovereigns over and over, killing as he pleased. The heavens dimmed, the sky cracked, and rivers of blood flowed. Corpses piled up. The primordial mountain sage monarch, the god lord of the Yu God clan and commander of the Saint Sovereigns, wore an ugly expression. The entire absolute god heaven was watching this battle, hoping the Yu God clan would swiftly suppress the true martial sacred ground. But things had gone horribly wrong. Even with every Saint Sovereign of the Yu God clan, they still could not handle Su Zimo. This monster strength is downright perverse, the axe-halberd Saint Sovereign muttered. I've never seen a sage monarch like this. Most likely invincible in his realm, the primordial mountain sage monarch said. Realm invincibility was simple. No matter how many opponents of the same level you brought, none could harm him. Because the difference wasn't in numbers, it was in quality. Do we really have to? The axe-halberd Saint Sovereign asked cautiously. No rush, the primordial mountain sage monarch said. Allow me to play a piece. The infernal creation eternal canon. God Lord, you should understand the consequences of playing the infernal creation eternal canon. Once you perform it, it's no longer just a simple immortal melody, axe-halberd Saint Sovereign said. I know, but the progenitor has secluded himself for 10 million years, comprehending his own Tao. The primordial mountain sage monarch replied. If every little matter requires the progenitor to emerge, infinite Tao enemies, fine. But a mere sage monarch? Are we saying that our mighty Yu God clan is powerless against him? Forget the progenitor's fury. This would make the entire absolute God heaven laugh at us. That may be true, axe-halberd sighed. But this is just our misfortune. This person is unervingly strange. Invincible among peers. How long has it been since we last saw such a thing? Or rather, who would have thought that at the Saint Sovereign realm, someone so invincible could still exist? The primordial mountain sage monarch said nothing. He slowly closed his eyes and adjusted his state to its peak. In that moment his heart grew silent. The shouting, the explosions, the battle cries around him faded away. What he heard was only the beating of his own heart. Thump, thump, thump. After a long time he suddenly opened his eyes. A sharp glint shot from his gaze. Boom, boom. Behind him, the mountain silhouette began to twist and reshape. Ultimately, it transformed into the outline of a massive drum. The primordial mountain sage monarch raised the drum mallet and struck. Boom! A single drumbeat, vast and overwhelming. It suppressed every sound in heaven and earth. The entire world seemed to fall silent. Everyone felt as if they had gone deaf, because under this massive wave of sound, all other noises were drowned out. Su Zimo looked up. The primordial mountain sage monarch had clearly entered a special state. The other Saint Sovereigns watched quietly as well. To the Yu God clan, the infernal creation eternal canon was not merely one of the 10 primordial God scriptures. It was their signature divine ability. One could even say the 10 god clans existed because of the 10 primordial god scriptures. Legend said that long ago, a mysterious being passed down these 10 arts. Formed from the primordial laws of heaven and earth, they represented the most extreme, ultimate forces. Afterward, each of the 10 god clans obtained one, passing it down through the generations. Although the 10 god clans appeared harmonious, often allied, seemingly united, each clan guarded its god scripture fiercely. They strictly forbade teaching it to outsiders. Every practitioner was implanted with a vicious curse in their god soul. If anyone leaked the art, they would be barred from samsara for eternity. Even the nether realms would reject their dead soul, leaving them to scatter into oblivion. As the primordial mountain sage monarch struck the drum again, a second colossal shockwave spread. On the third beat, many spectators clutched their chests. Some with weaker cultivation died instantly as their hearts stuttered. Even strong cultivators turned pale, their minds shaken. "Seal your hearing. This melody isn't something we can withstand," someone shouted. "Good thing the score isn't aimed at us," another gasped. "Otherwise, we'd already be corpses." Then came the fourth strike. This drumbeat was unlike the previous ones. When it landed, the entire world seemed ready to collapse. Endless space shattered. Heaven's mighty pressure descended. The fifth strike followed. This time, not only did the void shatter, but even the sky split open. The vast city below was destroyed, temples toppled, billions of miles of surrounding land split with countless fissures. Even Yu Mountain in the distance trembled as if about to crumble. Only now did many onlookers understand why Axhalberd had hesitated. The power of this infernal creation eternal cannon was too overwhelming. Once unleashed, even the Yu God clan themselves couldn't control it. Everything around would be flattened. Yu City destroyed. Yu Mountain collapsed. Nothing would remain. After the first 5 devastating beats, the primordial mountain sage monarch's drumming grew faster. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. A score that crushes rivers and mountains. A score that shatters heaven and earth. A score that kills all things. When the melody ends, so does the world. The origin point of this infernal creation eternal canon was none other than where Su Zimo stood. Sound, formless, intangible, destroyed everything. It sought to annihilate his body, soul, and true fate. Rumble. Rumble. Like divine fury, like God's howling. Yet at the center of this cataclysm, Su Zimo remained calm, as if untouched. No matter how fiercely the primordial mountain sage monarch beat the drum, nothing happened to him. How is this possible? Even the Yu God clan members were shocked. Never before had such a thing happened. Under the infernal creation eternal canon, who could remain unaffected? "What sorcery are you using?" Primordial mountain sage monarch shouted. "Heh, sorcery? Shouldn't you be more familiar with this?" Su Zimo smiled slightly. He closed his eyes, listening to the drumbeats, then slowly opened them again. "Your drumming isn't bad, and since courtesy goes both ways, I have a piece as well. Would you like to hear it?" He waved his right hand. Sound twisted and condensed into a long flute. He raised it and began to play. The flute's voice rolled like a vast ocean, waves crashing on cliffs, blades striking shorelines, flames sweeping across plains. Countless sounds of the world merged into the melody. The flute and drum collided. Power rippled between them. Members of the Yu God clan stared as if they'd seen a ghost. The infernal creation eternal canon? How does he know it? He isn't one of us. Impossible. This must be fake. Our Yu God clan's infernal creation eternal canon can't be leaked. Panic filled the crowd. The primordial mountain sage monarch and Su Zimo played the same infernal creation eternal canon, but their strengths differed vastly. When the melodies clashed, the drumbeats collapsed instantly, crushed to pieces. Power surged toward the primordial mountain sage monarch. Seeing this, his face changed drastically. Unable to hold on, he cried out, "Progenitor, save me!" The moment he shouted, a single zither note rose from the ruined Yu Mountain. Then the sun and moon lost their light. A single melody shook heaven and earth, moving even ghosts and spirits to tears. In the ruins of Yu Mountain, the sudden surge of power drew everyone's attention at once. The person had not yet revealed himself, but the aura bursting forth was enough to make hearts tremble. A deep and resonant voice fell. 10 God clans, enjoying the show, are you? Have you forgotten the lesson of lips growing cold when the teeth are gone? You plan to just sit there and watch. Hearing the voice echoing from the ruins, a soft laugh drifted from the void. The once calm sky rippled, and a curtain of light rose. Within the shining veil, a hazy figure flickered. Lord Yu, don't be angry. We were merely observing the situation. Besides, your Yu God clan isn't exactly at the brink of annihilation yet. The ancient progenitor hidden within the ruins clearly felt displeased. He let out a heavy snort. So, he said, what do you intend to do next? We 10 God clans are naturally one. The true martial sacred ground is the common enemy of all of us. As the voice from above fell, the indistinct figure in the sky faded. In its place appeared a pair of eyes. The eyes were pure white, overflowing with the dense aura of samsara. They spun like black holes, endlessly rotating, deep and boundless, as though capable of swallowing the entire universe. At the sight of these eyes, someone cried out in shock. It's the infinite samsara God Eye, one of the 10 primordial God scriptures. That should belong to the Dugu God clan. The speaker just now must have been Dugu Ling. Correct? The current God Lord of the Dugu God clan, and a master who has perfected the infinite samsara God Eye. The crowd whispered among themselves. With the Dugu God clan stepping in, the other God clans would surely appear soon. After all, the 10 God clans were bound together. When major issues arose, they always advanced together. As the infinite samsara God Eye opened wide, the sky itself twisted. This was samsara, an entire domain being cycled and shifted. Dugu Ling was trying to use the power of samsara to move this whole region elsewhere. Under the power of the eyes, the members of the Yu God clan began to fade. Their figures turned ghostly. The once crowded inner city of Yu City seemed, in an instant, completely emptied. Everyone had been pulled into the cycle of samsara. So, you intend to flee? Su Zimo asked with a smile. Flee? To deal with an insect like you? Hardly. Dugu Ling scoffed. He waved his hand, and an image formed in the air. The projection revealed a barren land. The earth was parched, cracked open by countless fissures. Not a single blade of grass grew. It was a place where nothing living could survive. The desolation seeped through the image, weighing on the heart, as though this land had remained unchanged for 1 billion years. If you want to fight, come here, Dugu Ling said coldly. We of the 10 God clans will be waiting. Don't tell us you'll lose your nerve. What is this place? Su Zimo asked with a frown. The Great Beyond, Dugu Ling replied, his tone flat. The 2 words crashed through the world like a thunderclap. The Great Beyond, so it really is the Great Beyond. That isolated land that exists alongside our 9 heavens, yet separate from it? What is the Great Beyond? Someone asked in confusion. Is it even part of the 9 heavens? The Great Beyond both belongs to the 9 heavens and doesn't, someone explained. The so-called 9 heavens refer to the Mortal Ascension Heaven, the Ghost God Heaven, the God Fiend Abyss Heaven, the Inferno Crucible Heaven, the Absolute God Heaven, the Mirage Tides Heaven, the Azure Mystic Heaven, the Grand Desolate Heaven, and the Calamity Immortal Heaven. Together, they are the 9 heavens. But beyond them lies another realm called the Great Beyond. Some say it is the 10th heaven, but more believe it is something apart entirely. Someone else asked, confused, if it exists, why have we never been there? Where is it? The Great Beyond drifts outside the 9 heavens. There were rumors that our absolute God Heaven held one of its entrances. I thought it was only legend, but it seems it was true. If Dugu Ling is telling the truth, then the 10 God clans must have already found a way inside. The crowd grew louder in discussion. The appearance of the Great Beyond was itself a monumental event. Its very existence had always been mere myth. Su Zimo ignored the commotion. He looked directly at Dugu Ling. Where is this great beyond? Don't tell me you're hiding there because you're afraid I'll find you. Us? Fear you? Ridiculous. Dugu Ling scoffed. The great beyond is your burial ground. A place we prepared specifically for the true martial sacred ground. So I still need to go searching for it? Su Zimo said, shaking his head. Too much trouble. At his words, Dugu Ling formed a seal and tossed him a token. Follow the guidance of this token and you'll find the great beyond. We will be there waiting to bury you. As his final words faded, his figure vanished from the sky. The onlookers felt a slight sense of regret. They had expected a grand battle, but not even the progenitor of the Yu God clan had appeared. A single user of the infinite Samsara God Eye had shifted the battlefield entirely. It also showed that the 10 God clans had backed down, for now, and it proved they were treating Su Zimo seriously. Perhaps the true martial sacred ground was not as weak as it appeared. Su Zimo lifted the token. In an instant, knowledge of the great beyond's paths etched itself into his mind. In truth, it was not something he needed to search for. The great beyond was everywhere, outside every border of the absolute God heaven. It was vaster than the entire heaven itself. Break through the spatial barrier with the right method, and one could sense it. The token in his hand was precisely such a method. Imperial Ancestor. The Willow Ancestor approached through the air. What should we do next? We go to the great beyond. Su Zimo smiled. It seems the 10 God clans have sensed something. They must have been preparing there for a while. Wouldn't going there put us at a stronger disadvantage? The Patriarch asked. The 10 God clans must be destroyed, Su Zimo replied. Even if the great beyond is a sea of blades and fire, I'll go. This time, none of you are coming. The spatial storms at the boundary are not something you can withstand. Is it really all right for the ancestor to go alone? The Willow Ancestor asked anxiously. Who said I'm going alone? Su Zimo chuckled. When the time comes, it might be quite lively. People who died, people who shouldn't exist, and even unrelated people might show up. The Willow Ancestor didn't quite understand what he meant, and Su Zimo had no intention of elaborating. He only said, make your preparations. I'm going to the great beyond. You're leaving right now? The ancestor asked. Right now. I'll locate the coordinates of the great beyond. Since they've already set up a grand display to welcome me, how could I not go? Su Zimo said with a faint grin. What should we do with you, City? The Patriarch asked. Su Zimo looked down. The demonic power of the infernal creation eternal canon and the beats of its war drum had already reduced the entire city to ruins. Handle it however you want, he said. There's nothing left anyway. Ancestor, take care, the Willow Ancestor said, bowing deeply. Su Zimo ignored the others. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. The token of the great beyond floated before him, releasing faint wisps of energy. Su Zimo took out the traceless compass and began his calculations. He hadn't used the compass in a long time. The reason was simple. There hadn't been anything worth searching for. The compass required a trace of energy to lock onto. It couldn't find something from nothing. The spirit energy around him surged until it seemed to blanket half the sky. The compass spun faster and faster, as though countless threads of fate were being computed within it. Across the absolute God heaven, every major force focused its attention on Su Zimo. This was not merely about the shifting balance of power. Within it was the method for entering the great beyond. Everyone wanted to know what kind of world the great beyond truly was, and what it contained. No one knew how much time had passed. Suddenly, a pillar of demonic energy erupted skyward from Su Zimo's position, piercing the clouds, blasting through layers of obstruction, and striking the boundary where the 9 heavens met the great beyond. It wasn't the true barrier of the 9 heavens. At best, it was a weak entrance region where the 2 realms touched. A genuine domain barrier was something that even an infinite Tao true God might not be able to pierce. Found it. Su Zimo's eyes snapped open. Starlight, sun, and moon seemed to whirl within them, holding the mysteries of heaven and earth. He ascended into the air with Shadow Tyrant in hand and cut toward the depths of the sky. This time, the endless blade aura did not sweep across the world. It plunged straight into the void, tearing at everything in its path. His first strike boomed, shaking the void wall but failing to break it. He did not stop. His blade intent grew stronger, carrying the power of the eightfold sky split and countless primal Tao. Su Zimo's primal Tao ocean was nearly infinite. He could use any primal Tao freely. The metal primal Tao cut sharply through the world. The fire primal Tao blazed uncontrollably. The lightning primal Tao shattered the heavens. The primal Tao of space and time bent and folded all timelines. The slaughter law birthed rivers of white bone. If one strike couldn't break it, then 10. If 10 failed, then 100. His eyes aligned with his blade as he roared and drove the curved knife deep into the sky's barrier. Thunderous booms erupted without pause, shaking heaven and earth. At last, after a long time, the barrier could endure no more. A deafening explosion ripped through the world, louder than thunder by hundreds of times. The blast nearly tore Su Zimo to pieces, but he activated the Gate of Eternity at the final moment, becoming invincible just long enough to survive. The void shattered, then immediately began to repair itself. A violent storm burst forth and dragged Su Zimo into it. Quick! Use the heaven-reflecting mirror to track him. Don't lose his trail. Powerful cultivators shouted from far away. Even from thousands of miles out, they tried to follow him into the great beyond. The storm engulfed him. Su Zimo felt like a piece of drifting weed, powerless before its force. The tempest shredded at him as though ready to tear him into pieces. He quickly pulled out the token, locating a coordinate within the storm. Driving his power through the chaos, he forced a path toward that point. Thunder roared. Space trembled. Then suddenly the storm vanished. Su Zimo felt his body land on solid ground. He opened his eyes. A new world unfolded before him. Desert sands pale as snow. The moon curved like a sickle. Yellow dunes stretching to the south. Daylight fading in the western sky. He surveyed his surroundings. This must be the great beyond. The land was barren. The sky dim with an aging sunset like a worn, dying elder. The ground beneath him was cracked and withered. No plant or beast could survive. Even the sky bore long fractures, as if something had once struck it. The world itself should have been able to heal, but here the scars never closed. This realm seemed forever broken, unchanged for tens of billions of years. The great beyond. A quiet sigh came from behind him. Su Zimo turned calmly. He didn't seem surprised. Standing beside him was Grandpa Dao of the true martial sacred ground, but he no longer looked like a simple elder. Perhaps now, the old man said with a smile, you should call me Saint Sovereign San Dao. You followed me in, Su Zimo said. We've planned for this moment for hundreds of thousands of years. How could I not witness it myself? Saint Sovereign San Dao laughed. He was no longer the ordinary-looking elder from before. 3 blades were strapped to his back, and the aura of his blade intent seemed even stronger even than Su Zimo's. In pure blade mastery you surpass me, Su Zimo said. I only cultivate the path of blades. You cultivate too many things, the saint replied. I'm dull by nature, I just want to take a single path all the way to the apex. You, however, want to practice every path under heaven. Su Zimo smiled as well, gazing up at the broken sky of the great beyond. So, he said, are the 10 god clans not coming out to welcome us? Spirit energy surged around Su Zimo's figure. His voice boomed out majestically, echoing across the heavens and earth of the great beyond, rolling on without end. As his voice resounded, a figure slowly appeared at the edge of the great beyond, Dugu Ling. He still carried his signature infinite samsara god eye. His gaze pierced through the world as he smiled calmly. 3 kilometers to the north. We've been waiting at Absolute Leaf Valley for quite some time. What a hassle, Su Zimo said, waving his hand. At that moment, within Absolute Leaf Valley 3 kilometers away, countless figures filled the space. Some stood. Some sat cross-legged. Some flew into the air, gazing across the vast great beyond. Among these figures, some stood upside down, swallowing and expelling the radiance of sun and moon, their eyes emanating godly power. Some held enormous bronze bells whose tolls rang out like death's approaching footsteps. Others had human bodies with beast heads, radiating bestial might that rolled out in waves, like the low growl of a king of infinite beasts. Their scarlet eyes stared forward intensely. Some stepped on seven-star swords, wielding sun-moon sabers, their aura soaring straight into the heavens. There were easily 1,000,000 such figures, and every single one of them was a saint sovereign. 1,000,000 saint sovereigns. It was not an exaggeration to say that nearly 99% of the saint sovereigns in the entire absolute God heaven were gathered here. This was the greatest military strength of the domain, because they belonged to the 10 God clans, the Heaven's Ward Tower, and their allies. What drew the most attention, however, were the 8 figures standing at the forefront. The sound of the grand Tao surrounded them. Tao intent swirled around their bodies, countless powers rippling outward. They appeared like gods, treading upon the universe, holding up the heavens. They stood as tall as the world itself. Among the 8, the man on the left was Primordial Mountain Sage Monarch, God Lord of the Yu God clan. At the center stood Dugu Ling, God Lord of the Dugu God clan. Who hasn't arrived? Dugu Ling asked. The 10 God clans were now only 8. That meant someone had broken the ancient oath, harboring disloyal intentions. Nangua God clan and Zhao God clan haven't come, someone beside him said after glancing around. The Nangua God clan lay east of the absolute God heaven, closest to the great beyond. As for the Zhao God clan, their recent movements had indeed been suspicious. Dugu Ling let out a heavy snort. He gazed toward the heavens and said, "You too, are you not planning to show yourselves?" As his words fell, loud laughter rang out from high above. "Brother Dugu, your perception is still as sharp as ever." "I didn't sense the two of you directly," Dugu Ling replied, "but I knew you wouldn't be absent." "What do you mean? Perhaps you'd care to explain," one of the newcomers said. "Explain what?" another voice said with a laugh. The figure on the left was Nangua Wang of the Nangua God clan. Wearing a blue robe, immortal in bearing, long whiskers drifting in the wind. The figure on the right was the Zhao God clan's God Lord, Zhao Qie. Wearing a gold robe, his massive body like that of a god demon descended to the mortal world. As the two appeared, waves of powerful energy rippled outward. Dugu Ling's aura surged in response, clashing against theirs with deliberate force. Seeing the tension rise, Shui God clan's God Lord Shui Changfeng quickly stepped forward with a smile. "Everyone, the enemy hasn't even arrived yet. Why start fighting among ourselves?" "You should ask them," Dugu Ling said coldly. "Where are your clan's ancestors and saint sovereigns? Or do you think the two of you alone are enough to deal with the true martial sacred ground?" "The old ancestors are occupied," Nangua Wang replied with a calm smile. "So they sent us in their stead." "Brother Dugu, your temper seems to have grown recently. What do you mean by this? Are you planning not to participate?" Dugu Ling asked. "We're here, aren't we?" Zhao Qie replied. "And what use are just the two of you?" Dugu Ling retorted bluntly. "This is our clan's decision," Zhao Qie said. "Does Brother Dugu wish to dictate our Zhao God clan's affairs?" Dugu Ling was about to argue further, but Shui Changfeng discreetly signaled him to stop. Regardless of the internal conflict, now was not the time. The people of the true martial sacred ground would arrive at any moment. Whatever grudges they had could be dealt with after exterminating the sect. Dugu Ling took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. In the sky above, a pair of giant hands tore apart the firmament. Su Zimo stepped across the distant horizon and descended upon Absolute Leaf Valley in an instant. Looking down from above, he saw 1,000,000 saint sovereigns gathered below. In the blink of an eye, thousands of gazes locked onto him. Anyone else might have been terrified out of their wits. But Su Zimo remained calm and smiled faintly. "Oh, quite the gathering. Not a bad lineup to kill." "You came alone?" Dugu Ling asked, frowning. "What do you think?" Su Zimo countered. Your true martial sacred ground must still have survivors, Dugu Ling said. Otherwise, you wouldn't dare be so arrogant. Since you're all here, stop hiding. I want to see who stands behind you. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold snort came from the void. Dugu Ling, your tone is quite bold, Saint Sovereign Sandao said as he tore open the void and stepped out. If your progenitor hadn't saved you back then, you'd have been slain by me beside the Black Turtle River. Why didn't you dare act so arrogant then? The moment Saint Sovereign Sandao appeared, Dugu Ling's brows furrowed. Sandao, you're not dead? His intuition screamed that something was wrong. Back then, he had personally witnessed the old ancestor cut down Saint Sovereign Sandao at the Black Turtle River, using Saint Sovereign Sandao's own blade. Dead? Your Dugu God clan is worthy of killing me? Saint Sovereign Sandao sneered. Speaking of which, where is your undefeated old ancestor? I wouldn't mind experiencing his techniques again. What about the others from the true martial sacred ground? Dugu Ling pressed. If Saint Sovereign Sandao was still alive, then the others might also be alive. The 10 god clans were shaken. What exactly was the true martial sacred ground scheming? If they weren't dead, why hide for hundreds of thousands of years? The great beyond is indeed an excellent burial ground for all of you, Saint Sovereign Sandao said with a laugh. Let World Weary come out. Su Zimo nodded slightly. With a wave of his right hand, the true martial tribulation tower flew from his palm. This was no longer the same tower it had been in ages past. Boundless power erupted from its sides, as though its emergence suppressed even the heavens of the great beyond. The tribulation tower spun continuously, its aura surging to its peak. This can't be, Dugu Ling stammered. He stared at the tower, shaking his head again and again. Impossible. How could this be possible? Why is it impossible? Saint Sovereign Sandao asked as he watched Dugu Ling's stunned expression. After we destroyed the true martial sacred ground, we also searched their entire domain, Dugu Ling said, shaking his head. This true martial tribulation tower was right in front of us. Why were you bold enough to pull this off? In that moment he felt like a fool. What they had pursued desperately for ages had been right under their noses, yet they had never discovered it. What exactly were you scheming? Xue Changfeng asked, frowning. No need to rush. Just watch, Saint Sovereign Sandao said with a laugh. But you did choose the right place, the great beyond. Whatever happens here, it doesn't matter. If this battle took place in the absolute God heaven, that entire world might have been destroyed. The eyes of the 10 god clans remained fixed on the tribulation tower. As it rotated, an old man in a crimson robe slowly stepped out. This was the elder Su Zimo had previously encountered world-weary. His appearance made many among the 10 god clans instinctively retreat several steps. Their fear of him was self-evident. You're still alive? Dugu Ling asked in shock. I'd love to die. I've long grown weary of the world. But heaven won't take me, and mortals can't kill me, World-weary said with a helpless laugh. So you've been hiding all this time, Dugu Ling said. But with just you 3, you still can't stir up much trouble. Who said there are only 3 of us? World-weary asked. Boy, do you know what this thing behind me is actually called? The true martial tribulation tower? Dugu Ling asked cautiously. That's just a name used to fool ordinary people. Its true name is Heaven's Annihilation. Heaven's Annihilation. So that's its real name, Dugu Ling murmured. A weapon capable of destroying the heavens themselves. Do you want to try it? World-weary asked. Dugu Ling remained silent, staring fixedly at the tower. When Su Zimo had entered it earlier, he had seen countless tombstones inside. Now, as waves of immense power rippled out, each of those tombstones floated into the air. Over 1 million tombstones filled the void. Monument of the Spectral Soul Saint Sovereign, erected in the 274th year of the true martial era. Monument of the Reckless Savage Saint Sovereign, erected in the 274th year of the true martial era. Monument of the Great Love Saint Sovereign. Monument of the Red Lotus Saint Sovereign. Countless tombstones with countless inscriptions spun in the air, driven by some mysterious force. What the hell is this? Dugu Ling asked. You already know the answer, Saint Sovereign Sandao replied. In the next instant, powerful energy burst from every tombstone. With a thunderous boom, multicolored primal das shot into the heavens, dyeing the sky. Crack, crack, crack. As the tombstones shattered one after another, the crowd was stunned to see coffins floating out from within. Each coffin radiated a powerful aura, sealed by the river of fate. For hundreds of thousands of years, the beings within them had been in slumber. The first coffin opened. A corpse slowly sat up, a saint sovereign dressed in black and white robes, wrapped in the aura of fate. The grand fate saint sovereign. How many years has it been? He murmured as he opened his eyes. After 372 years, World-Weary answered. Not long, then. A brief journey through the river of fate, and my dream ends as I return to true martial, the grand fate Saint Sovereign said. His eyes surged with countless strands of destiny, flowing like an endless ocean. With a wave of his hand, the primal Tao of fate from all the coffins gathered around him. As each coffin opened, an overwhelming saintly might burst forth. No, 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 this is fake. All of this is fake. It has to be fake, Dugu Ling said, shaking his head in disbelief. We clearly killed you all back then. We destroyed your true fates, tore apart your god souls. How could you still be fine? You can think of it this way, Saint Sovereign Sandao said. What you saw back then, that was the fake. Fake? Dugu Ling muttered, unable to accept it. You killed only our avatars, the grand fate Saint Sovereign said directly. In the final battle of that ancient war, we never actually participated. Whatever you wished to see, we made sure you saw it. Back then, your 10 god clans were too strong, so the true martial sacred ground retreated to avoid direct confrontation. But today is the day your 10 god clans are wiped out. We could kill you then, and we can kill you again today, Dugu Ling said coldly. Nangua God Clan, Zhao God Clan, why are you two still waiting? Saint Sovereign Sandao barked. With a thunderous boom, Nangua Wang and Zhao Qie, who had been standing among the 10 god clans, pulled out miniature versions of the true martial tribulation tower. My apologies, everyone, Nangua Wang said solemnly. When no one was paying attention, the two men drove the miniature towers into the ground. Moments later, the valley rumbled violently. A sealing field spread across the entire foundation of Absolute Leaf Valley, trapping everything within. This was the power of heaven's annihilation. No being below the heavens themselves could break it. Only High Heaven himself could unseal it. Nangua Wang, what the hell are you doing? Several people roared. Apologies. We are now allies of the true martial sacred ground, Nangua Wang replied. How dare you? Do you wish to doom your entire clan? Xue Changfeng shouted. Brother Dugu, since ancient times water has always flowed to higher places, Zhao Qie said. We understand the law of winners and losers. The destiny of the absolute God Heaven is about to change. Naturally, we choose to stand with the true martial sacred ground. No more talk. Today, only one side will survive. Very well. Don't blame us for being ruthless, Dugu Ling said coldly. Progenitors, we await your decision. He waved his hand. Around Absolute Leaf Valley, several terrifying auras erupted. Crystal coffins appeared, 8 in total, each radiating power surpassing that of ordinary saint sovereigns. These were the supreme progenitors of the 8 god clans. They had sealed themselves away in the coffins, ignoring worldly affairs, focusing only on reaching the 12th meridian gate, a lifelong ambition. But when the clans faced extinction, they had no choice but to summon their ancestors. Dugu Ling glanced at World-Weary. He knew clearly. World-Weary was an infinite Tao, an existence far beyond saint sovereigns. The moment the 8 crystal coffins opened, several sky-piercing auras burst forth. Even though the figures inside the coffins had yet to emerge, Their presence alone faintly suppressed all of heaven and earth. Welcome, progenitors. Upon leaving your coffins, countless saint sovereigns from the 8 god clans bowed deeply, their voices raised in reverence. To be acknowledged like this by so many saint sovereigns clearly showed that the 8 figures within the coffins were undoubtedly 8 infinite Tao cultivators. A soft, almost imperceptible sigh was heard. Since it is the day of awakening, something major must have occurred again. From within the crystal coffins, the silhouettes of 8 individuals slowly surfaced. Among them were elderly men, middle-aged men, and even a strangely shaped child. Their appearances differed, but one thing was the same: their might. Each was enveloped in primordial edicts that displayed the overwhelming strength of their identity. Dugu Ling looked toward one of the old men and hurriedly said, "Ancestor, the true martial sacred ground has risen from its ashes. Now they intend to provoke another challenge." The true martial sacred ground. The 8 slowly turned their heads. World-weary, Sandao, you're alive. You old ghosts are all still breathing. Why would we be dead? Saint Sovereign Sandao sneered. Though only a Saint Sovereign Sandao had long surpassed the limits of that realm. It was said he could face infinite Tao cultivators directly and survive hundreds of exchanges. To achieve such feats as a Saint Sovereign was enough to make anyone proud, and it was why he, a mere Saint Sovereign, stood out even among infinite Tao cultivators. "What about the others?" one of the 8 asked. In their eyes, the many Saint Sovereigns whose names were carved on the floating tombstones were not even worth acknowledging. It wasn't arrogance. From the perspective of infinite Tao beings, Saint Sovereigns were like Saint Sovereigns viewing Grand Emperors, as weak and insignificant as ants. The only ones worthy of their attention were the strongest forces of the true martial sacred ground. These 8 were the progenitors of the 8 god clans. Samsara Tao progenitor, creation-devouring god king. Crimson Hell war god, giant sun immortal venerable, heaven-commanding true god, mountain titan true god, 3-life tribulation progenitor, heaven-defying progenitor. Each one could single-handedly face armies of saint sovereigns and prevail with overwhelming might. The Samsara Tao progenitor's eyes swept over the many tombstones floating behind the true martial sacred ground. Only the last 2 tombstones still remained intact, wrapped in the power of destiny, their powerful auras circulating endlessly. "Is that celestial torchbearer and the radiant progenitor?" the Samsara Tao progenitor asked. "Please come out and meet us. Samsara, my old friend, it has been ages." The cheerful voice came from within one of the tombstones. Upon looking carefully, one could see lines engraved on its surface. Tomb of the Celestial Torchbearer, erected in true martial era year 274. "You've hidden yourselves quite deeply?" the Samsara Tao progenitor said coldly. "I am already out. How much longer do you intend to hide?" With a wave of his hand, surging Samsara force erupted. Thunderous rumbling filled the heavens as a colossal palm of Samsara smashed toward the tombstone. The strike shook the world, and the tombstone shattered instantly. From within walked out an unmatched primordial beast. With a single sweep of its wings, heaven and earth dimmed. The great palm dissolved into nothingness. "After all these years, Samsara, your temper is still fiery," the celestial torchbearer said with a laugh. He was no human, but a great demon king of the torch race. Though the torch race belonged to the 100 races, its numbers were among the smallest, one misstep from extinction. Celestial Torchbearer resembled a massive predatory eagle, but stretched to 1,000 meters long, almost like a western dragon. Its wings blotted out the sky, and its body was covered in overlapping scales. Its head was like that of a vulture, sharp, aggressive, and fierce. Its talons were powerful enough to shred space like tofu. A strange, faint rule force rippled from him. Most striking of all were his eyes, one black, one white, seemingly capable of seeing through all things, past and future. This was the Celestial Torchbearer. Seeing him appear, another infinite Tao cultivator, the mountain titan true god, snorted. "Radiant, are you not coming out? Must we drag you?" At those words, the final tombstone cracked, and the form of the radiant progenitor emerged. A brilliant radiance burst forth, illuminating all creation, engulfing the heavens. He stood like a sun spanning ancient and modern times. Ages had passed, all things had changed, yet light alone remained eternal. With the Tao of light paving a shining path, the radiant progenitor slowly walked forth. He wore golden robes so immaculate and transcendent that no force, no matter how strong, could stain them. In the past, the mountain titan True God growled, "My 10 god clans had 10 infinite Tao cultivators. Yet your true martial sacred ground had only a few. So many years have passed, and I want to see what new tricks you have. Back then we let you deceive heaven and escape with your lives. Today, it is time to end everything." The radiant progenitor did not take offense. The true martial sacred ground indeed had only 3 infinite Tao cultivators, himself, the celestial torchbearer, and world-weary. He turned toward Nangu Wang and Zhao Qie. "Have your ancestors arrived? Fellow Taoist, we have been waiting for quite some time." A long, hearty laugh echoed across the sky. 2 streams of light swept in from the horizon, one black and white, the other wrapped in time-space edicts. In a blink, they crossed the distance of ages and descended into the absolute Leaf Valley. When the brilliance faded, the 2 were revealed as Nangua God Clan's ancestor, Trinity Buddha, and the Zhao God Clan's ancestor, God Demon Overlord. Though the title Overlord sounded common, in all the world, only he was truly worthy of that name. His cultivation was the God Demon Creation Atlas, one of the 10 primordial God scriptures. When mastered, he could walk like a god or demon, ripping god beasts apart or trampling the 9 heavens with ease. Trinity Buddha, meanwhile, cultivated the primeval Buddha God Scripture's 3 sutras. With these 2 joining the battlefield, the true martial sacred ground now had 5 infinite Tao cultivators. Seeing the progenitors of 2 god clans join the ranks of the true martial sacred ground, the Samsara Tao progenitor shook his head lightly. "You too, how foolish. Why would you side with the true martial sacred ground? Fellow Taoist Samsara, each walks his own path. Our apologies," Trinity Buddha replied with a gentle smile, eternally appearing like a benevolent Maitreya Buddha. "I do not understand. With the 10 god clans united, we are invincible within the absolute God heaven. Why would you insist on standing opposite us?" The Samsara Tao progenitor asked. "The 10 god clans are not as glorious as you claim," God Demon Overlord said coldly. "Those are merely petty schemes among the younger generations, far from enough to cause true waves. You and I both know this. The great Tao is long. The 10 of us should have advanced toward infinite Tao together, toward the supreme 12 meridian gates." The Samsara Tao progenitor wished to persuade further, but the radiant progenitor cut him off. "Samsara, have you still not understood? Nangua and Zhao chose us because they see promise in us. They believe the future of the absolute God heaven belongs to the true martial sacred ground. Your 10 god clans will ultimately become ruins of the past. This new era has no place for old relics. Radiant, do not be presumptuous. Even with those 2 joining you, in terms of power, we still hold the advantage," the Samsara Tao progenitor said. Their side had 8 infinite Tao cultivators, while the true martial sacred ground had only 5. At those words, Saint Sovereign San Tao snorted. "Then count me as one more." The aura surrounding him, originally that of a saint sovereign, began to transform. The power of primal Tao shed its old form and underwent metamorphosis. Then, primordial edict power infused with pure blade intent erupted outward. Thunder roared as blade intent soared into the heavens, cutting across the 8 desolations, traversing the 9 skies. Wherever the blade light passed, all living things were destined to bow beneath his blade. After all these years, San Tao, you have stepped into that realm as well, the mountain titan True God exclaimed. "Is that not natural? My blade Tao has built up power for ages and now bursts forth. With such strength, you should hardly be surprised," San Tao said. Primordial edicts of the blade bloomed endlessly around him, unceasing, undying. It was a blade of eternal resentment, enduring without end. You six are still not enough, the Samsara Tao progenitor said. Yet his tone held no trace of contempt. Instead, he slowly asked the name that no one wished to mention. Where is true Marshall? What's the rush? Whether we're enough or not, only battle will tell, Sandao said. Creation-devouring God King, you are famed far and wide. Allow me to learn from you. Learn? This is a battle of life and death. Naturally, I will give my all. The creation-devouring God King replied. Creation force burst from his hands. He was born with 6 fingers, and the God scripture he cultivated was the creation-devouring God finger. Both sides had already taken battle stances. Tension filled the heavens. Finally, with Sandao's swing of his arm, Blade, come! A razor-sharp long blade shot toward him from the edge of the sky. Heavy and imposing, it was 3 feet and 3 inches long. Cold to the touch, its surface engraved with countless Tao runes and truths. This blade possessed its own spirit. Only Sandao could wield it. As the blade was unsheathed, Sandao charged the creation-devouring God King first with earth-shaking force. The creation-devouring God King raised his 6-fingered hand, intending to pinch and break the incoming slash. In an instant, more than a dozen infinite Tao cultivators clashed at once. Torrents of primordial edicts collided, bathing the battlefield in unstoppable force. The heavens roared as if collapsing. Every casual strike from these beings could topple worlds. Fortunately, this was the great beyond, unchanging since ancient times. Anywhere else would already have been reduced to ruins. Even the entire absolute God heaven might not withstand their battle. Infinite Tao cultivators were not bound to a single battlefield. One step spanned 10 million miles. One strike destroyed heaven and earth. Such was their might. As the top-tier combatants fought, the saint sovereigns across both sides erupted into their own massive melee. Dugu Ling shouted sharply, "Kill!" Instantly, countless saint sovereigns surged forward like a flood, charging out of absolute Leaf Valley. The sky and surrounding void had no intact space left. Su Zimo naturally joined the battle. He charged directly at Dugu Ling. "So you are the ancestor of the true martial sacred ground?" Dugu Ling asked. "The dead need not know so much," Su Zimo said. "Quite the boast. I only hope your bones are as hard as your mouth," Dugu Ling replied. With a wave of his hand, the infinite Samsara God Eye manifested above his head, shining over the heavens like the very eye of the heavenly Tao. A giant eye appeared in the sky, taking in all of absolute Leaf Valley. Distort the void and erase. Destructive beams shot out from the eye, seeking to pierce Su Zimo with 1,000 fatal wounds. Su Zimo avoided many of them with agile footwork, but with thousands of beams firing, some were bound to strike. "You think only you can wield the infinite Samsara God Eye?" Su Zimo said. "What are you talking about?" Dugu Ling froze. In that moment, Samsara power erupted from Su Zimo's eyes as well. A colossal pair of eyes appeared above him, more domineering and more annihilating than Dugu Ling's. With a deafening blast, the destructive beams from Su Zimo's infinite Samsara God Eye crashed directly into Dugu Ling's own. A scream rang out as Dugu Ling was sent flying. A saint sovereign of the Yu God clan caught him and warned, "Be careful. This boy is strange. He used our Yu God clan's infernal creation eternal canon earlier. And now even the infinite Samsara God Eye. How can he wield those God scriptures? What God scriptures does he cultivate?" Dugu Ling demanded. Everyone shook their heads. In the battle hundreds of thousands of years ago between the 10 God clans and the true martial sacred ground, no one had seen Su Zimo. He seemed like a completely new face. "Let me try." A saint sovereign from the Chu God clan stepped forward. Forming seals, he condensed the Aryan swastika God seal. Ancient blood energy surged, threatening to drown the heavens. With a thunderous blast, the Aryan swastika God seal detonated before Su Zimo. But immediately afterward, an even stronger Aryan swastika God seal, Su Zimo's, exploded outward, sending the Chu God clan's saint sovereign flying. "That is impossible." An Aryan swastika god seal blasted out and instantly stunned the Saint Sovereign of the Chu god clan. Even their Chu god clan's divine art, he could use the Aryan swastika god seal too. This guy. Don't tell me. Don't tell me he's mastered all 10 primordial god scriptures? Everyone was shocked. Some didn't believe it while others wanted to test it. On the other side, the Saint Sovereign of the Wan god clan and the Saint Sovereign of the Mu god clan stepped forward from the left and right. Heaven-shattering god scripture and heaven-earth Dharma codex were unleashed at the same time. Behind the Wan god clan's Saint Sovereign, a colossal heaven-shattering giant rose from the ground like a titan supporting the heavens. When it began charging forward, the world shook with thunder. On the other side, the Mu god clan's Saint Sovereign also used the heaven-earth Dharma codex, turning his body into a giant. 2 giants descended from the heavens, one from the left and one from the right, charging in to crush him. Su Zimo let out a light laugh. With a wave of his hand, he too unleashed the heaven-earth Dharma codex. Even Shadow Tyrant grew thousands of times larger with him. His curved blade became a massive giant blade, and countless power vortexes roared within it. A far more powerful, far more immense heaven-shattering giant appeared. Su Zimo swung his fist and sent the Mu god clan's Saint Sovereign flying with a single punch. Although they were using the same divine art, Su Zimo had the heaven-shattering force empowering him, limitless strength and hundreds of billions of power vortexes capable of destroying heaven and earth. The opponent simply couldn't compare. After sending the Mu god clan's Saint Sovereign flying, Su Zimo's figure shifted. He appeared before the Wan god clan's Saint Sovereign. His giant Shadow Tyrant carried a blade aura that shook the sky, dragging behind it a streak of power as vast as a galaxy. The endless blade force crashed down upon the Wan god clan's heaven-shattering giant. Explosions boomed again and again. Overwhelming force tore through everything. The heaven-shattering giant, originally towering and mighty, looked fragile before Su Zimo's blade. That blade destroyed all things, directly erasing the giant under its edge. The Wan god clan's Saint Sovereign spat a mouthful of blood and collapsed unconscious on the ground. It was clear how terrifying that strike had been. If he hadn't been a Saint Sovereign, the strike would have killed him outright. Damn it! The surrounding Saint Sovereigns growled, all furious and shaken. But Su Zimo didn't care. He simply smiled. Don't bother testing me one by one. I wasn't planning to hold back today. His roar erupted. Heaven-shattering force swirled around him. The heaven-earth Dharma codex empowered his flesh. The god-demon creation Atlas empowered his soul. The infinite samsara demon eye slowly opened above his head. The Aryan swastika god seal formed before him. One hand cast the creation devouring godfinger. The other wielded the infernal creation eternal cannon. The 3 life gates towered above him. The 3 bodies of his 3 sutras cycled through him. In an instant, all 10 primordial god scriptures empowered him at once. Power erupted violently. No matter which Saint Sovereign stood before him, such overwhelming force could tear them apart instantly. Everyone who witnessed this had only one word in their heart. Invincible Sage Monarch. There was no other way to describe him. Among all the Saint Sovereigns they had seen in their lives, none had ever been this strong. If they had to categorize him, he was weaker than an infinite Tao powerhouse but stronger than any Sage Monarch, standing at a midpoint between the two. Seeing this scene, all 10 god clans were stunned. He really mastered all 10 primordial god scriptures. How is that possible? Where did he learn them? If it were just one divine art, maybe it could have been leaked. But all 10? That's impossible. Their faces turned grim. It was no exaggeration. The 10 primordial god scriptures were the foundation of each of the 10 god clans. For them to be leaked to this extent was a catastrophic problem. In that moment, many silently reached the same conclusion. Su Zimo must die. He had now become a direct threat to the status and survival of the 10 god clans. Thousands of Saint Sovereigns charged at Su Zimo, but on the true martial sacred ground side, their own Saint Sovereigns were no pushovers. They rushed forward to protect Su Zimo, throwing themselves into the chaotic battle. "Let me handle this," Su Zimo shouted. Instead of retreating, he advanced, charging straight into the mass of Saint Sovereigns. With the 10 primordial god scriptures empowering him and the blade intent of eightfold sky split, Su Zimo was unstoppable, cutting down everything in his path. Whoever blocked him died. Even gods and Buddhas in his way would be cut down. A group of Saint Sovereigns was beaten into utter disformation, fleeing in panic. Every one of his blade strikes carved massive ravines into the earth, slicing through all space and turning everything into nothing. Su Zimo raised his head again. Wherever his gaze passed, many people were terrified, stepping back uncontrollably, unable to meet his eyes. "Come and fight," he roared. "This man is insane," someone muttered. But Su Zimo had already rushed in, overturning the battlefield and giving them no chance to resist. The battle continued fiercely. Because Su Zimo was a monstrously powerful sage monarch, the true martial sacred ground was practically crushing the 8 god clans. The Nangua and Zhao god clans, aside from summoning their ancestral patriarchs, also brought every Saint Sovereign they had to join the fight. Seeing the true martial sacred ground's momentum rising while the 8 god clans fell back step by step, Dugu Ling grew anxious and helpless. He could only shout toward the sky, "Progenitor, please help us. We can't hold on much longer." He knew that among infinite Dao powerhouses, their side held the advantage. If just one infinite Dao cultivator stepped in to handle the Saint Sovereigns, the entire crisis could be ended instantly. That was the power of an infinite Dao cultivator. One person could shift the entire battle. No exaggeration. No matter how brutal the Saint Sovereign's battle looked, once an infinite Dao powerhouse intervened, they were like children, helpless in that person's hands. It seemed the ancestor heard Dugu Ling's plea. Among the infinite Dao cultivators of the 8 god clans, the Crimson Hell War God descended into the battle. He fell from the sky with a wave of his hand. All the Saint Sovereigns from the true martial sacred ground who had been charging forward were blasted into the ground instantly, without any chance to resist. "Young man, you're impressive," the Crimson Hell War God said. Looking at Su Zimo, he shook his head. "A shame you're not part of our 8 god clans. You would have been a fine seedling. But for that very reason, we cannot allow you to live." Blood-red light flashed in his eyes. A terrifying force erupted from him. His blood energy formed a long river that surged forward, as if to drown everything. Any Saint Sovereign touched by that blood river screamed as their flesh, life essence, and even their souls dissolved away, reduced to white bones. Even the bones began to corrode within the river of blood. This was a terrifying sight. At the Saint Sovereign realm, one had already severed all ties with the mortal world and refined oneself into sainthood. Their bodies were unshakable. A Saint Sovereign's bones were the toughest part of their body, so tough that even if a Saint Sovereign was killed, their bones could not be destroyed. But the power of this blood river was overwhelming. It was so strong it made people tremble, too afraid to get close. Countless Saint Sovereigns retreated from the blood river, unwilling to be swept into it. And the true target of the blood river was naturally Su Zimo. The blood river surged into the sky, its waves rolling and churning in the void, as if it wanted to swallow everything into oblivion, came crashing down from above. At that moment, Su Zimo felt waves of terrifying power erupting toward him. No one understood this feeling more clearly than he did. It was the oppression of primordial edicts, not the nomological truths of a grand emperor, nor the primal Tao of a Saint Sovereign. Primordial edicts were the strongest force in this world. They constructed everything. As the saying went, without edicts, nothing can be formed. And from these grand edicts came every blade of grass, every flower, every tree. An infinite Tao controlled the most terrifying power in existence. Seeing the blood river roaring toward him, Su Zimo slowly drew the primordial edicts contained within the God world into his body. His inner world, being a true world, also held endless regenerative primordial edicts. But he rarely used them. His body, flesh and soul alike, simply couldn't withstand primordial edicts. Not even the tree of life or the healing arts inherited from the wood god Jumong were enough. Because primordial edicts were primordial edicts. If someone could casually wield them through tricks, then the power would be meaningless, unworthy of being the foundation upon which the universe was built. But with the blood river about to consume him, the primordial edicts within Su Zimo surged. His figure became faint and illusory. In a single instant, he stepped out of the domain of primordial edicts and escaped the razor edge between life and death. Yet even this brief use of primordial edicts left him drenched in sweat, as if he had been pulled from water. He panted heavily. Infinite Tao cultivators are truly strong, he thought. Above, the Crimson Hell war god frowned, intrigued. Looks like you're hiding quite a few secrets. To think you can use primordial edicts even for a moment. But his eyes sharpened. He swept his hand outward, and endless primordial edicts gathered from all directions, condensing around him. The primordial edicts compressed the world itself, sending waves of terror through everyone watching. This was the structure of the world. A single misstep could leave this realm with wounds that could never heal. Although the world could repair itself, that ability only applied to ordinary attacks. Damage caused by primordial edicts was almost impossible to mend, because the power of self-repair itself came from primordial edicts. Su Zimo slowly raised his head, looking at the Crimson Hell war god. The war god laughed. So what if you dodged once? I possess limitless primordial edicts, endless, inexhaustible. How will you escape? Since you used the god scripture of my clan, it's only fitting that I use a god scripture to send you off. Consider it a courtesy. A giant swastika sigil formed before him, the Aryan swastika god seal, one of the 10 primordial god scriptures. Boy, do you want to die? The seal radiated crushing pressure. This Aryan swastika god seal was nothing like the one Su Zimo could summon. This one was formed of primordial edicts, not primal Tao. Its aura was monstrous and blood-soaked, perhaps the true, perfected form of the 10 primordial god scriptures under primordial edicts. You are the one who will die. Su Zimo shot back. All he could do now was stall for time. He knew that even if he were given one more chance or 10, he still couldn't withstand this attack. The force was too overwhelming. Dodging a blow from an infinite Tao powerhouse once was already something to be proud of. He suddenly thought of Saint Sovereign Sandao. That man, still in the Saint Sovereign realm, could hold his own for hundreds of moves against an infinite Tao. That was a true invincible Saint Sovereign. Su Zimo, relying on God scriptures alone, was a false imitation. Otherwise, how could he be so helpless now? He resolved that after this battle, he would seek teaching from Saint Sovereign Sandao. He shook his head. At the edge of life and death, he was still thinking about the future. If things really became hopeless, he could only awaken the power of the previous infernal lord. We could make a deal. The Crimson Hell war god smiled. What deal? Su Zimo frowned. Though he spoke of negotiation, the Aryan swastika god seal only grew stronger. Hand over all 10 primordial god scriptures. Let me cripple your cultivation. Then I'll spare your life, the war god said. The hell? You think I'll believe you? Su Zimo sneered. In that case, just die. The war god flicked his finger. The Aryan swastika god seal shot forward, tearing through the heavens. The blood-formed swastika spinning as it dissolved everything in its path. I can't dodge this. Su Zimo knew instantly. Just as he prepared to awaken the previous infernal lord's power, a figure suddenly appeared before him. The speed was astonishing. Even Su Zimo, a sage monarch, couldn't see how he arrived. No tearing of space. No residual shadows. It was as though he had already existed everywhere within heaven and earth. His appearance shocked everyone. The moment the Aryan swastika god seal arrived, the figure stood before Su Zimo and blocked the attack. With a wave of his hand, he crushed the seal into nothing. It was as though a miniature kingdom flickered within his palm. Who are you? The Crimson Hell war god shouted in alarm. Before him stood a man dressed in scholar's robes, refined, gentle, like a quiet teacher. Heaven and earth call my name. All beings praise me. I am Godspeed Progenitor. The voice was calm and light, When the black-robed man's voice fell, many present were still in a daze. But the Crimson Hell War God's expression changed instantly. Godspeed! Godspeed! You're that Godspeed! He shouted the name 3 times in a row. Even Su Zimo was stunned. Godspeed? Grand Emperor Shen Xing. Back in the primordial heartlands, the true martial sacred ground had been a colossal force with 4 emperors. Aside from Jinwu and Sandao, another was Shen Xing. Godspeed progenitor once swore that in his lifetime, he would traverse all the brilliance of the 9 heavens. After arriving in this world, Su Zimo had never even considered him, because someone like Godspeed progenitor would never stay in one place. He would roam the entire 9 heavens. But now, looking at the man standing before him, Su Zimo felt the overflowing, explosive aura radiating from the man's body. The primordial edicts circulating around him proved he had already reached the infinite Tao realm. This wasn't surprising. During the previous great war between the true martial sacred ground and the 10 god clans, Godspeed progenitor had already stepped into infinite Tao. Among the 4 grand emperors of the true martial sacred Jinwu was renowned across eras, a founder of an age. Hong Tian had dominated several eras with unmatched might. Sandao built his fame through the pinnacle of saber cultivation. Any discussion of sabers would always lead back to him. Compared to those 3, Godspeed progenitor was the opposite. His reputation was neither grand nor influential. Even after becoming a grand emperor, he walked the world alone, never doing anything earth-shaking. His name remained obscure. Yet because of this purity, Godspeed progenitor surpassed even Sandao in stepping into the infinite Tao realm. He had been an infinite Tao powerhouse for many years now. Now that he had appeared, he looked calmly at the Crimson Hell War God and smiled. Crimson Hell? Bullying the younger generation? What's the point? Why don't you try me instead? So you really came back, the Crimson Hell War God said. I dislike conflict and do not make enemies lightly. But since the sect needs me, I will not refuse, Godspeed progenitor replied. Primordial edicts spread beneath his feet. In a blink, no one saw how he moved. Not Su Zimo, a sage monarch. Not even the Crimson Hell War God, a fellow infinite Tao powerhouse. His movement was a blur. Godspeed progenitor appeared beside the Crimson Hell War God and slashed down with a single sweeping kick. The Crimson Hell War God hurriedly crossed his arms to block. With a thunderous boom, he was sent flying. Again! The War God roared in anger. The Aryan swastika God seal roared to life in his hands, empowered by primordial edicts. The blood sea surged around it, the seal seeming to transform into a blood fiend as it charged. Godspeed progenitor waved his hand. Countless primordial edicts tightened within his grasp. His path was the Tao of speed, an unassuming law, yet when pushed to its extreme, capable of erasing all things. His speed now had reached its limit, far beyond what mortal eyes could follow. Space warped. A massive black hole formed, radiating a devouring force capable of consuming everything. Su Zimo lifted his head slightly. He felt the horrifying tearing force. As the Aryan swastika God seal approached, it was swallowed completely. Even the primordial edicts imbued in the seal had no chance to resist. This was the apex of the Tao of speed. Godspeed progenitor had mastered it far more deeply than most infinite Tao cultivators. The Crimson Hell War God's brow furrowed. This sudden appearance of Godspeed progenitor was proving troublesome. But with things already escalated, the battle had to be decided. He knew his control over primordial edicts wasn't as refined. He waved his hands, and behind him his true fate manifested. A massive blood god Azura. It emerged as though rising from a blood sea, its eyes glowing scarlet. In its 6 hands, it wielded 2 Azura blades, blood waves surging around its body. It bore 3 heads, 6 arms, and a blood-red cape. As the Azura appeared, all of the Crimson Hell War God's blood Tao primordial edicts wrapped around it. One could even hear the rushing, boiling flow of blood inside its body. The Azura roared and charged toward Godspeed progenitor with blades raised. Godspeed progenitor lifted his hand, and his true fate manifested as well. It wasn't some beast or demon. It was himself. He had imprinted his own being as his true fate. This choice had pros and cons. A self-based true fate had perfect compatibility and infinite potential for growth. But its power depended entirely on the cultivator. If one remained mediocre, the true fate would be rubbish. But clearly, Godspeed Progenitor had chosen correctly. Having stepped into infinite Tao, his imprinted true fate was now terrifyingly strong. The two Godspeed Progenitors moved across the heavens, left and right, as though walking along the path of the heavenly Tao. Their speed was unreal, leaving only faint traces behind. The trajectory they traced was the trajectory of the great Tao itself, paved with the Tao of speed, humming with Tao resonance. When the blood god Azura charged with its twin blades, the two Godspeed Progenitors were already circling it at impossible speed. One Godspeed Progenitor was already frightening, but two pushed space into a spiraling black vortex. The blood god Azura was trapped within the black hole, resisting the devouring force. Godspeed Progenitor's speed neared the speed of light. A storm formed at the center point, shooting to the heavens and swallowing both him and the blood god Azura. Thunderous rumbling shook the skies. The entire firmament warped. Seeing this, the Crimson Hell war god turned pale. He could feel his true fate beginning to tear apart from the strain. Godspeed Progenitor, you're seeking death, he roared. An Aryan swastika mark appeared on his forehead, embedded into his skull. When it lit up, a celestial pathway manifested behind him, a road stretching upward into the heavens. The power of the heavenly Tao poured into the Crimson Hell war god's body, and his strength surged once again. The blood god Azura, previously trapped inside the Godspeed Progenitor storm, suddenly extended claws dozens of meters long and tore the storm apart, stepping out into the air. The Godspeed Progenitor hovered in the sky, his gaze fixed on the Crimson Hell war god. The latter's long, blood-red hair floated messily without wind. In his eyes, it was as if an entire sea of blood was reflected. Behind him, the heavenly Tao connected straight into the heavens, as though linking the Crimson Hell war god directly to the will of the heavens themselves. The Aryan swastika mark above his head shone even more brightly. This sight made the Godspeed Progenitor frown slightly. The Crimson Hell war god laughed. Godspeed Progenitor, this is heaven and earth's acknowledgement. I am the infinite Tao acknowledged by the world. That is why I can enjoy the power of the heavens. And you, the Godspeed Progenitor sneered. Acknowledgement from heaven and earth is nothing more than your own wishful thinking. Do you not know that anyone who receives such acknowledgement can never stand against the heavens? Instead of acknowledgement, call it what it truly is, a slave mark. A curse that can easily destroy you. The Crimson Hell war god's face tightened. Of course he knew this. Yet he still argued. And what of it? As long as we don't rebel against the heavens won't interfere with us. We're no different from any other infinite Tao. In fact, we become even stronger by borrowing the heavenly Tao's power. The Godspeed Progenitor let out a mocking laugh. You think anyone can wield this power? If you rely on it, you will never break through the 12th Meridian Gate. The Crimson Hell war god's expression twisted with fury, as if Xinxing had exposed a secret buried deep within his heart. Indeed, this was something the Crimson Hell war god and many infinite Tao cultivators did not wish to face. When a sage monarch breaks through into the infinite Tao realm, they gain the ability to control the power of primordial edicts. The heavenly Tao also governs the power of primordial edicts. From that moment on, infinite Tao cultivators stand on the verge of approaching the heavenly Tao itself. At this critical point, two paths appear. The first path. The heavenly Tao bestows a title upon you, acknowledges you. Your forehead is imprinted with the heavenly Tao's true intent. This so-called investiture is essentially enslavement, ensuring you can never open the 12th Meridian Gate, never attain the power to transcend heaven and earth, and never become a true immortal and unruled by the heavenly Tao. This is the heavenly Tao's method of protecting itself. The second path. Refuse and rebel against high heaven's investiture and forge an anti-heaven Tao fruit. But then a great tribulation descends. This tribulation is terrifying and targets not only you but everyone around you. Some infinite Tao cultivators cannot survive these trials. They and all their loved ones perish within them. The Godspeed progenitor was one of those who survived such a tribulation and forged his own Tao. The Crimson Hell War God, on the other hand, submitted to the heavenly Tao. Although he could draw upon its power to strengthen himself temporarily, his path would end here. This was the most painful fate. After striving for a lifetime and reaching the infinite Tao realm, he was only one step away, just one step, from transcending the cycle of samsara and surpassing high heaven. And yet it ended. Would anyone accept that? Imagine a competition. The most painful position is not the quarterfinals, nor the semifinals. It is the runner-up. The others still stand far from the championship, but the runner-up is only one step short. Thus, the pursuit of Tao comes to a halt. The ones who suffer most are not the saint sovereigns, nor the grand emperors, but the infinite Tao cultivators. Shut the hell up! The Crimson Hell War God roared. Power surged from his body as the blood sea raged and coiled around him. The waves of blood swept outward as he stepped into the air, unleashing an overwhelming aura. He struck at the Godspeed progenitor with one massive claw. An enormous creature took shape within the blood sea, as if it possessed sentience. The Godspeed progenitor snorted coldly and waved his hand. The Tao of Speed swirled around his palm, and the two began their battle in the sky. Their collisions were too fast for the naked eye to follow, and within mere seconds they exchanged tens of thousands of blows. With the heavenly Tao empowering him, the Crimson Hell War God could temporarily fight the Godspeed progenitor as an equal. Meanwhile, Su Zimo managed to escape danger for the moment. His gaze swept toward the 8 god clans, and he immediately joined in the hunt for the saint sovereigns. The entire world had plunged into chaos. The land of the great beyond was a dead world, an eternal sunset, an eternal wasteland. But today, blood bloomed across it. It was Saint Sovereign blood, bright and vivid, scattering through the air and splashing onto the barren ground. One corner of the great beyond erupted with constant explosions in the sky. Su Zimo slew 3 Saint Sovereigns in succession, destroying not only their bodies and souls but also their life-death souls, which he tracked from miles away and obliterated completely. Sandao, fight again! The creation God King roared. He had clearly suffered losses. The cuts on his robe were marks from Saint Sovereign Sandao, a recently ascended infinite Tao cultivator. To be wounded by such a newcomer was humiliating. Fight then. Do you think I fear you? Saint Sovereign Sandao snorted. Enough. At this rate, no result will ever come, the Samsara Tao progenitor said. The combatants' strengths were too closely matched. Neither side could overwhelm the other. The 8 god clans had held a slight advantage earlier, but the Godspeed progenitor's arrival had erased it. What do we do now? The Mountain Titan True God asked. This stalemate was disastrous. After all, 2 tigers cannot share one mountain. The 8 god clans and the true martial sacred ground could never coexist or jointly rule the absolute God heaven. Neither side would accept it. No matter what happens, the ones destroyed in the end will be you 8 god clans, World Weary said calmly. World Weary, don't go too far. The Samsara Tao progenitor replied. Think carefully. Besides us, you have another enemy. As his words fell, he shouted toward the sky above the great beyond. Sages of the heavenly court, your conditions are accepted. Join hands with us. As the Samsara Tao progenitor's words fell, the distant edge of the sky, where the great beyond met the setting sun, suddenly revealed an immeasurably vast palace, overflowing with immortal aura. Or perhaps it had always been there, hidden within the void, only choosing this moment to manifest. No one yet appeared from within the palace, but under the shroud of immortal mist, an overwhelming pressure seemed to awaken, one everyone could clearly feel. Only one of the heavenly court's 36 celestial domains came? The Samsara Tao progenitor asked with some displeasure. A voice responded from within, Fellow Taoist Samsara, we ask for your understanding. Every move the heavenly court makes is watched by the 9 heavens. If we were to fully mobilize, the 9 heavens would plunge into chaos. A man then stepped out of the palace. His long hair draped over his shoulders. His gaze shone like that of a god, and divine might radiated from him. A divine eye opened upon his forehead. Wearing an immortal robe, bathed in celestial light, he walked forward slowly. Around him flowed the primordial edict of immortality. Within the 3,000 Daos, there existed countless primordial edicts, yet the world had never possessed a primordial edict of immortality. This was the heavenly court's terrifying strength. They had somehow compelled heaven itself to descend a new primordial edict and acknowledge the existence of an immortal primordial edict. With high heaven's recognition, even if the primordial edict of immortality were filth or rotten trash, it would still hold supreme authority. Moreover, the primordial edict of immortality belonged exclusively to the heavenly court. Only its members could comprehend it. Many people recognized the newcomer at a glance. He was the lord of the heaven-crowned celestial domain and an infinite Tao cultivator, one of the 36 celestial domains, heaven-crowned celestial god. Among the 36 celestial domains, the heaven-crowned celestial domain ranked near the top. It was clear that the heavenly court was taking this matter extremely seriously. They dared not send all 36 celestial domains, or the 9 heavens cultivators would intervene. None of them wished to see the heavenly court dominate unchallenged. If the heavenly court destroyed the true martial sacred ground today, tomorrow they might destroy everyone else. Individually, no one could rival the heavenly court. Only by uniting could the 9 heavens resist them, and this understanding had already been reached among the major powers. Thus, the 8 god clans had been left with no choice. If there had been any other way to eliminate the true martial sacred ground, they would never have cooperated with the heavenly court. Everyone knew the consequences of bargaining with a tiger. Heaven-crowned celestial god walked across the sky, overlooking everyone from above. With a habitual smile, he said, "There is no need for alarm. Since the heaven-crowned celestial domain dared to come alone, we naturally have the confidence to help everyone eradicate the true martial sacred ground." Hearing this, the radiant progenitor and celestial torchbearer from the true martial sacred ground both snorted heavily. "The heavenly court's tone is far too arrogant," they said. "Arrogant? Only because we possess the strength to back it." Heaven-crowned celestial god replied calmly. "Others simply lack the qualifications to speak this way." Radiant progenitor answered coldly, "Then I would like to see how you plan to destroy the true martial sacred ground. Unless the heavenly court empties its entire nest, a single heaven-crowned celestial domain is hardly worthy." "Of course, it is not just my heaven-crowned celestial domain." Heaven-crowned celestial god smiled. "Members of the Heaven's Ward Tower, you may come out." The moment those 3 words, Heaven's Ward Tower, were spoken, everyone who understood their significance drew a sharp breath. The Heaven's Ward Tower was not part of the heavenly court. They were the balancers of the absolute God Heaven, maintaining stability and restraining chaos. Unless their world fell into turmoil, they would not appear. But now, as heaven-crowned celestial God finished speaking, another great tower manifested on the opposite side of the sky. Powerful waves of energy rippled outward. This hall had an unusual appearance. It had no roof and resembled a god beast. The beast's massive jaws opened toward the heavens in a sky-facing posture, the very origin of the hall's name. Inside the Heaven's Ward Tower, several figures sat cross-legged, each in the same sky-facing posture. Their leader was an infinite Tao cultivator, the Supreme Ascendant. At this moment, he sat upon a lotus formed of heavenly Tao, his gaze solemn, as though he could judge the world itself. "True martial sacred ground, do you acknowledge your crimes?" he said immediately upon appearing, without asking anything else. The true martial sacred ground's members were instantly enraged. "Supreme Ascendant," World-Weary answered coldly, "thousands of years ago, you were the one who blocked our true martial sacred ground. If not for your interference in that ancient battle, why would we have been forced to hide until today? And now you wish to act as an obstacle again. Tell me, is your Heaven's Ward Tower the domain's guardian, or the 8 god clans' lapdog?" Supreme Ascendant replied evenly, "Under the rule of the 8 god clans, the absolute God Heaven will continue toward peace. but you will bring war. Therefore, I will not allow you to succeed. Saint Sovereign Sandao snorted. Supreme Ascendant, I did not expect you to be so foolish. War and peace have always been determined by the strong. Even if we do not bring war one day, when the heavenly court seeks to unify the 9 heavens, do you think you will be able to stop them? In this world, whoever has the bigger fist decides everything. Supreme Ascendant answered coldly. Then as you said, right now our fist is bigger. We are stronger. Therefore, the absolute God Heaven is naturally ours to decide. World-weary shook his head slightly. A rotten tree cannot be carved. In that case, the Heaven's Ward Tower no longer deserves to exist. Whether it deserves to exist is not for you to decide, Supreme Ascendant replied. Worry about yourselves first. What I failed to kill back then, I shall bury here today in the great beyond. Tensions had clearly reached their limit. With the arrival of the Heaven-crowned Celestial Domain and Heaven's Ward Tower, the 8 God clans now held an undeniable advantage, especially in terms of infinite Tao cultivators. Yet the true martial sacred ground remained calm. One after another, its members began forming seals with their hands, clearly following a long-prepared plan. Welcome the progenitor. Even world-weary and radiant progenitor, mighty patriarchs, formed seals, their expressions solemn as if summoning something. Even Su Zimo had not expected the true martial sacred ground to play this card. Progenitor, these words said everything. The sect had only one ancestral figure, Jin Wu, for whom the sect was named. Among all the true martial sacred ground's emperors, he was the very first to come to the 9 heavens. He was also the first Grand Emperor in the primordial heartlands to bear heaven's will. Only after his arrival did others, such as Sandao, Shunxing, and Hong Tian, begin bearing heaven's will and coming into the 9 heavens. True martial isn't dead? Someone from the 8 God clans exclaimed in shock.